Chapter 89. Zhou Hao began to use the true power of the divine pulse realm. At the same time, he raised his left hand and formed a series of palm shadows, causing the air to tremble. Lin Tian's face froze as he stepped on the yin-yang puppet and quickly retreated. Divine Pulse Realm Martial Technique, Illusory Cloud Palm. Mu Qing's face changed slightly. Sherdong said, Zhou Hao has entered the Divine Pulse Realm, so he will naturally choose a Divine Pulse Realm Martial Technique. This is bad. Both of them stared at the high platform with a heavy expression. Illusory Cloud Palm was an inferior Divine Pulse Realm Martial Technique. Although Zhou Hao had only practiced this martial technique for a few days, it was still a Divine Pulse Realm Martial Technique. It was far superior to a body refining Realm Martial Technique. Boom! For a moment, the sky was filled with palm shadows, causing the air to rumble. Zhou Hao's figure flickered as he raised his right hand and performed the 13 sword cuts. For a moment, the situation changed. Although Lin Tian's speed was fast, facing a Divine Pulse Realm Martial Technique and a superior body refining Realm Martial Technique at the same time, he was in a difficult situation. He could only keep dodging. What's wrong? Have you run out of skills? Zhou Hao said coldly. The illusory cloud palm was extremely terrifying. Palm shadows rolled and mixed with the power to shatter mountains and rocks. Lin Tian waved his long sword and slashed at the palm shadows while dodging. With a bang, a palm shadow fell on his sword. The surging power forced him to retreat, and he felt his blood and qi rolling in his chest. Good. Seeing this scene, Lu Sheng couldn't help but shout. Looking at Lin Tian's difficult situation, Lu Sheng clenched his fists and his face was filled with excitement. Divine Pulse Realm Cultivation and Divine Pulse Realm Martial Technique are really troublesome. Although Zhou Hao's comprehension of the illusory cloud palm has not reached the entry level, it is still a Divine Pulse Realm Martial Technique. It has increased his combat strength by a lot. Behind the rockery, a powerful inner palace disciple said. Around the main arena, everyone stared at the arena as if they were the ones fighting there. This battle affected everyone's nerves. 9/. Zhou Hao said coldly. With the combination of the illusory cloud palm and the 13 sword cuts, Lin Tian was forced to keep dodging. Zhou Hao's face was filled with a cold and arrogant smile as the ferocious palm energy intertwined in the air. A mere body refining realm martial artist dares to compete with me. Zhou Hao mocked. Staring at Lin Tian, Zhou Hao's eyes were filled with viciousness. Lin Tian's face was expressionless. As he dodged continuously, he truly felt Zhou Hao's strength. The divine vein realm is indeed extraordinary. He muttered to himself. Lin Tian could clearly feel Zhou Hao's vigorous, true essence. It far surpassed that of a body refinement realm expert, and it was simply not on the same level. Adding on the fact that it was a divine vein realm martial skill, like the illusory cloud palm, a normal 9th layer body refinement realm cultivator would probably be defeated in one move. Hearing this, Zhou Hao sneered. Do you still have time to sigh? The sound of a sword rang out as the 10th sword of the 13 sword slash fell. Then, Zhou Hao waved his left hand, and 16 powerful palm shadows formed an encirclement and pressed down on Lin Tian. Boom! The ferocious palm force spread throughout every corner of the main arena. It didn't dissipate for a long time, and even the air was roaring. Enough! At this moment, Lin Tian spoke in an indifferent voice. Clang! The shocking sound of a thunderous sword rang out, and the several illusory cloud palm shadows that rushed towards Lin Tian were shattered by the sword. Such a scene shocked Zhou Hao. The illusory cloud palm was a divine vein realm martial skill, but now it was shattered by Lin Tian's sword. He revealed an expression of disbelief. What did you do? Zhou Hao said in a deep voice. Lin Tian was expressionless. He raised the long sword in his hand and pointed it straight at Zhou Hao. At this moment, tiny electric arcs were flashing on his long sword, crackling loudly. With a whoosh, Lin Tian rushed out. Boom! As if thunder had exploded, Lin Tian raised the long sword in his hand. A dazzling sword of lightning appeared on the main arena, and in the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of Zhou Hao. The 11th sword, Zhou Hao roared. With a swoosh, Zhou Hao's 11th sword was directly shattered. Lin Tian clenched his left hand into a fist, and without any fancy moves, he punched out. Damn it! Zhou Hao's expression changed, and he crossed his arms in front of his body. With a bang, Zhou Hao felt as if his arms were hit by a 10,000-pound boulder. His body involuntarily flew backward, and his legs rubbed against the ground for 7 feet before stopping. After stabilizing his body, Zhou Hao felt his arms go numb, as if he had lost all feeling. Lin Tian stood in the same place and did not pursue. At this moment, not only the sword in his hand, but even the surface of his body was covered in lightning, and crackling sounds could be heard. This scene caused many people to be moved. Behind the rockery, several inner palace disciples were shocked, and their expressions changed. This is that sword skill. He actually cultivated that sword skill. One of them was shocked. Mu Qing and Shi Dong were also shocked. They stared at Lin Tian's current appearance, and their eyes were full of light. Azure Thunder Sword Skill? He cultivated this sword skill. Moreover, he actually cultivated it well. This, Mu Qing and Shi Dong looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Both of them were elders of the martial house, so they were naturally clear about the martial skills in the martial library. Shi Dong's eyes flickered, and he said, Azure Thunder Sword Skill is the most dangerous martial skill to cultivate in the martial house. It is also the most difficult martial skill to cultivate, and it has the highest probability of failure. Why did he choose this martial skill? To cultivate this martial skill, he has to withstand the strongest attack of the 4th grade demonic beast, Thunder Flame Boar. Is he not afraid of death? Shocking Wind Sword Art, Azure Thunder Sword Skill. Each one is harder to cultivate than the other. At the beginning of the Azure Thunder Sword Skill, if you are not careful, you will lose your life. Mu Qing smiled bitterly. This little guy really knows how to choose. This is the so-called monstrous genius, choosing a path that others don't usually take. Shi Dong was helpless. At the side, Su Shu's beautiful eyes widened. This guy, Su Shu, was Mu Qing's disciple, so he naturally had a good understanding of the 9-yang martial house. He knew how dangerous it was to cultivate the Azure Thunder Sword Art, and he also knew how difficult it was to cultivate this set of martial skills. He never thought that after Lin Tian chose the shocking Wind Sword Art, he would choose the even more difficult Azure Thunder Sword Art. This set of sword art was missing at least 70%. Clang! On the main stage, the sound of the thunder sword was incessant, and it was extremely ear-piercing. Lin Tian brandished the Azure Thunder Sword Skill, and the resplendent sword light slashed out with the force of 1,000 soldiers. When Zhou Hao's illusion cloud palm came into contact with the sword light, it was instantly shattered. Zhou Hao retreated, and his face changed. Impossible. With a boom, Zhou Hao was enraged, and he slashed down with his silver sword. 13th sword, Zhou Hao roared. The 13th sword cut was divided into 13 swords, and each sword was stronger than the last. This 13th sword gathered the essence of this martial skill, and its power was incomparably strong. Azure Thunder, first sword. A cold voice sounded. Lightning flashed around Lin Tian's body, and he seemed to have turned into a thunder god. His long sword became even more resplendent. In the blink of an eye, the two swords collided. Crack! The silver sword in Zhou Hao's hand shattered into 4 pieces. Lin Tian lifted his leg and swept it out. With a bang, Zhou Hao flew back in a sorry state, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Oh my God! Many of the spectators were dumbfounded. The powerful Zhou Hao, the #1 in the outer house and a divine pulse realm expert, actually had his longsword broken by a body refinement realm cultivator and sent flying with a kick. This scene was a little too terrifying. Zhou Hao wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stared at Lin Tian gloomily. You hurt me again. Staring at Lin Tian, Zhou Hao's eyes became a little ferocious. Compared to your hypocritical appearance, I prefer your current appearance. At least it's not disgusting. Lin Tian said indifferently and walked towards Zhou Hao step by step. Also, Don't say childish words like I hurt you again. Have you forgotten that this battle is a life and death battle? If you die, I live. If you live, I die. It's as simple as that. Lin Tian's voice was very calm, but there was a hint of coldness and madness in it. What a terrifying person. Someone's heart trembled. Zhou Hao's face was extremely gloomy. He was a divine pulse realm expert, and Lin Tian was a body refinement realm cultivator. They were not on the same level, but at this moment, Lin Tian had the upper hand again. What a joke! There's only one ending, and that is your death. Zhou Hao roared. With a bang, Zhou Hao activated all his true origin energy of the divine pulse realm. Using both of his hands, Zhou Hao continuously stacked his palms together, causing the space to tremble. Die! With a furious roar, Zhou Hao's palms slammed towards Lin Tian. Lin Tian's face was cold. Lightning flickered around his body. With a single step, he crossed a distance of 15 meters in an instant. Slash! A cold word came out, followed by a thunderous roar. The Azure Thunder Sword art was classified as a high-grade body refinement martial technique by the Nanyang Martial House. This was because this martial technique's defect rate was too high. Moreover, it was too dangerous and too difficult to cultivate, so no one had ever chosen it. This martial skill's true level was the Sea of Consciousness realm. Lin Tian had already mastered the remaining 3 layers. Even if he used it with his body refinement realm cultivation, if he used it with his full strength, he would be able to display a might comparable to a low-grade divine vein martial skill, or even stronger. Clang! The overbearing sword radiance was vast and mighty in every corner of the main stage. The sound of thunder completely covered Zhou Hao's illusory cloud clap. Under such a tyrannical sword aura, Zhou Hao was forced to continuously retreat. Sword scars appeared on his body. In the gap between the exchange of blows, Lin Tian lifted his leg and kicked Zhou Hao's chest. Zhou Hao flew backward and coughed up blood. Suddenly, Lin Tian's figure appeared behind Zhou Hao and slapped him with a backhand. Slap! A loud slap was heard. Zhou Hao, who had just stabilized his body, was sent flying again. In the next few exchanges, Zhou Hao was defeated again and again. He was completely suppressed. This, with his body refinement realm cultivation, he actually forced Zhou Hao, who is in the divine pulse realm, into such a state that Zhou Hao is going to lose. Many of the spectators were almost petrified. Lin Tian's face was cold. He pushed the Azure Thunder Sword art to the limit. Every sword slash brought about a violent, thunderous roar, directly forcing Zhou Hao to continuously retreat. Puff! Another sword slash. Zhou Hao's right hand was cut, and blood immediately dripped. With a muffled groan, Zhou Hao retreated. However, he was met with Lin Tian's ruthless kick. Zhou Hao flew backward. Just as he fell to the ground, Lin Tian had already pressed forward and ruthlessly stomped on him. Ah! Zhou Hao couldn't help but scream. Several of his ribs were directly broken. Blood constantly gushed out from his mouth. Chapter 90. Being stepped on by Lin Tian, Zhou Hao screamed in pain. Then he roared and his face turned hideous. He crossed his hands and roared as he attacked with even more illusory cloud palm. Lin Tian stepped back and blocked all the palm prints with his sword. You're indeed in the divine pulse realm. You're really strong, he said indifferently. However, at this very moment, these words were incomparably jarring to Zhou Hao's ears. I'll kill you, Zhou Hao roared. His eyes were bloodshot as he charged at Lin Tian. Zhou Hao pushed the illusory cloud palm to the limit. Terrifying palm energy intertwined and fell on Lin Tian. Zhou Hao was furious and unwilling. He was in the divine pulse realm, but he was pushed to this point by Lin Tian, who was in the body refinement realm. Boom! As Zhou Hao went berserk, the illusory cloud palm became even more terrifying. The palm prints were airtight. Lin Tian was expressionless. He stepped on the yin-yang puppet and dodged calmly. The Azure Thunder Sword technique slashed down from time to time. After a few breaths, he shattered one of Zhou Hao's palm prints. Then he grabbed Zhou Hao's right wrist with his left hand and twisted it. With a cracking sound, the bones in Zhou Hao's hand cracked. Damn it! Zhou Hao roared and swung his left hand at Lin Tian. Lin Tian clenched his fist and met the attack indifferently. The fist and palm collided. Zhou Hao groaned and staggered backward. Clang! At this moment, a sword whistled in the arena. A sword chi swept across and pierced through Zhou Hao's left shoulder. Zhou Hao screamed as his entire body was sent flying. While Zhou Hao was still in the air, Lin Tian arrived again and punched Zhou Hao's abdomen. With a bang, Zhou Hao fell from the air and crashed into the arena. Blood kept flowing out of his mouth. He was in a sorry state. Zhou Hao was knocked to the ground again. His eyes were bloodshot. The true origin energy in his body was going berserk. He struggled to stand up. Unfortunately, this time, both of his arms were already broken. Relying on his only 2 legs, he was unable to exert any strength at all. Moreover, at this moment, Lin Tian landed beside him again and stomped on him. When his foot landed on Zhou Hao's chest, the sound of bones breaking was heard again. Ah! Zhou Hao couldn't help but scream. Be quiet, Lin Tianling said. He moved his right leg away from Zhou Hao's chest and swung his left fist down at the same time. With a loud boom, the entire main arena began to shake. Zhou Hao spat out large mouthfuls of blood as the platform under his back shattered into pieces. Cracks spread out in all directions like a spider web. This scene caused many of the spectators to widen their eyes. What? What a terrifying power! Is he really only in the body refinement realm? How could a body refinement cultivator have such terrifying strength? Many people's hearts trembled. In the distance, even the few inner palace disciples behind the rockery were moved. At the same time, many people also realized another problem. Zhou Hao lost. Someone muttered to himself. Although this voice was soft, it caused everyone in the surroundings to tremble. The divine vein realm Zhou Hao, the #1 disciple in the outer sanctum, was defeated by a new student in the body refinement realm. Heavens! Many people were dumbfounded. In the main arena, Lin Tian stepped on Zhou Hao's chest with his right foot, and the tip of his sword was hanging on Zhou Hao's throat. Zhou Hao's eyes flashed with a hint of fear. What are you going to do? What am I going to do? Lin Tian was a little amused. You lost the battle of life and death. What do you think I'm going to do? As soon as he finished speaking, the tip of Lin Tian's sword moved down and landed on Zhou Hao's throat. The sharp tip of the sword immediately pierced the skin on his throat, and bright red blood flowed out. In an instant, Zhou Hao felt a chill all over his body. Lin Tian, how dare you? A roar was heard as Lu Sheng ran out and scolded Lin Tian Dao. Senior brother Zhou Hao is the son of Governor Feng. Why don't you put away the sword in your hand? Lin Tian tilted his head, his eyes cold. Lu Sheng was afraid, but he still braced himself and said, if you kill senior brother Zhou, you will also get lost. Lin Tian turned his hand and slashed out with his sword. The tyrannical sword fell on Lu Sheng's body, and with a bang, Lu Sheng was swept away. Lu Sheng landed in a corner, coughing up blood as he stared at Lin Tian in fear. On the main stage, Lin Tian's eyes were ruthless. You told the Mo clan that I was in the dark forest. I haven't settled the score with you yet, and now you dare to jump out. You're a loyal dog. You! Lu Sheng's mouth was overflowing with blood, and his face was ashen. Around them, many people were moved. Is he the shameless person Lin Tian mentioned before? He told the Mo clan that Lin Tian was in the dark forest, and led the Mo clan to chase him to the dark forest? Shameless! Many Marshall House disciples stared at Lu Sheng with disdain. You're slandering me. What nonsense! Lu Sheng shouted. However, looking at his ashen face and trembling body, who would believe his sophistry? Shameless! Sushu stared at him angrily. However, while many people were disdainful of Lu Sheng, they also thought of Lu Sheng's words. Lu Sheng is right. Zhou Hao has a strong background, and it's not easy to kill him. The commander of a city, second only to the city lord, is quite terrifying. Sigh. Many people sighed. The commander of Feng's supervisor city, Zhou He, was an expert who retired from the battlefield. He was once a captain of the Imperial Army, and it was said that his cultivation was at the peak of the 4th level of the divine range. As the commander of Feng's supervisor city, Zhou he had many strong generals under his command, and these forces all belonged to the empire. In terms of power and influence, the Mo clan couldn't compare. Why does this guy always provoke people with strong backgrounds? Su Shu muttered. Beside her, Mu Qing and Shi Dong looked at Lin Tian. They wanted to say something, but in the end, they didn't say anything. A life-and-death battle was fair, and just, what could they say? At this moment, everyone held their breaths as they looked in the direction of the main stage. Lin Tian looked down at Zhou Hao and couldn't help but laugh. It's not bad to have a good family background. Although he was laughing, it was full of sarcasm. Hearing his words, Zhou Hao's face turned ugly. Looking at Lin Tian, Zhou Hao calmed down and said in a deep voice, Brother Lin, I've lost this time, and I was wrong before. Can you spare my life? As long as Brother Lin is willing to stop, I'll ask my father to help you suppress the Mo clan in the future. Although the Mo clan is powerful in Feng's supervisor city, it's not as powerful as my father. Lin Tian squinted his eyes. Are you trying to remind me that if I kill you, I'll provoke a force more powerful than the Mo clan? No, Brother Lin, you're overthinking. I didn't mean that. Zhou Hao quickly shook his head. Zhou Hao was a smart person. He knew what kind of situation he was in, and he could only compromise. Staring at Zhou Hao, Lin Tian couldn't help but laugh. If our positions were reversed, would you let me go? Lin Tian said with a smile. Zhou Hao's eyes flashed with a sinister light. Then he shook his head. Brother Lin, what are you talking about? We're brothers from the same sect. Although I do have some grudges with Brother Lin, when the time comes, I naturally won't kill you. Looking at Lin Tian, Zhou Hao seemed very sincere. Enough, Zhou Hao. Stop pretending. Lin Tian said with disdain. You wanted to kill me in Greenwind Ridge, but now you're saying you won't kill me. Don't you think it's contradictory? I've said it before, put away your tricks in front of me. You can use your father's identity to threaten me. It's better to watch, at least it won't make me feel disgusted. Hearing this, Zhou Hao's face turned even uglier. Brother Lin, let's stop. I'm not threatening you, but if you kill me, there will be a lot of trouble. Why do you have to? If you don't kill me, Zhou Hao, swear to let bygones be bygones. We can be best friends, and I can ask my father to support you against the Mo clan. I can even help you rebuild your clan. Zhou Hao said in a low voice. Let bygones be bygones? Shouldn't I be the one saying that? Lin Tian said sarcastically. As for what you said about helping me rebuild my clan, there's no need for that at all. And your father is no threat to me at all. Zhou Hao frowned. Brother Lin, backbone is indeed important, but sometimes if there's a win-win situation, why hold back the so-called backbone? Again, I'm not threatening you. If you kill me, my father will definitely not let you go. With the military strength under my father's command, it's very easy to destroy the Mo clan. It's even easier to deal with you. Lin Tianling snorted, and the right leg that stepped on Zhou Hao's chest suddenly exerted force. Zhou Hao groaned, and blood gushed out of his mouth again. You're just a commander-in-chief of Fengjian City. Do you really take your father seriously? Do you think everyone will be afraid of him? Lin Tian said disdainfully. Before you die, I'll show you something interesting. With his back to everyone, he handed the long sword to his left hand. His right hand moved slightly, and a gold medal that was placed in the stone ring appeared. As the son of a commander, you shouldn't be unfamiliar with this, right? Lin Tianling smiled. Zhou Hao's eyes swept over the gold medal, and his complexion suddenly changed. This is... Zhou Hao naturally knew what this gold medal was, and he also knew what it represented. In that instant, Zhou Hao thought of a legend that had spread through Fengjian City not long ago. A mysterious and stunning 16-year-old array master had been born, and this array master had saved the granddaughter of the Empire's great general. In that moment, Zhou Hao couldn't help but tremble. Fear even appeared in his eyes. You're that? Puff! Lin Tianyi raised his sword, and Zhou Hao's throat was immediately cut open, stopping Zhou Hao's next words. You talk too much. With a cold voice, Lin Tian put away the gold medal. Zhou Hao's eyes widened, and blood gushed out of his mouth. His eyes were filled with regret, shock, fear, and unwillingness. However, the light in his eyes rapidly faded, and in the blink of an eye, they dimmed. Life destruction stage. With a snort, Lin Tian removed his foot from Zhou Hao's chest and stood to the side. Looking at Zhou Hao on the high stage, everyone's complexion changed. Deities dead? This madman, he actually killed Zhou Hao. Is he really not afraid of the commander's might? Many people's hearts trembled. The son of the commander, his status was much higher than Mo Sen's. This guy. Su Shu's eyes widened. Although she knew that Lin Tian wasn't afraid of anything, seeing this scene, she couldn't help but be shocked. Mu Qing and Sherdong glanced at each other and couldn't help but bitterly smile. A young man's heart is fearless. I really don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Mu Qing and Sherdong were helpless. Everyone around them was silent. Looking at the handsome youth on the main stage, holding his sword, everyone gradually thought of another problem. In the inner house selection, only one person can win. Someone muttered. Chapter 91. The Nanyang Martial House had hundreds of years of history since its establishment. The inner house selection had been held countless times, but this was the only time that only one person was standing on the main stage of the inner house selection. Only one person won. One person. Oh my God. Another record. A peerless madman. Monster. Abnormals. Many disciples muttered to themselves. Kicking 24 elite outer house disciples off the main stage, killing Mo Kong, and killing the number 1 outer house disciple, Zhou Hao, was now the only one standing on the main stage. This scene shocked everyone. This guy. Su Shu's eyes widened. The middle-aged man presiding over the inner house selection was at a loss for words. He couldn't keep up with the current situation and looked at Mu Qing and Sherdong for help. The Nanyang Martial House's Martial House master came and went like a ghost. No one had ever seen him before. Almost all the elders were in charge of the Martial House. Now, only Mu Qing and Sherdong were present. The middle-aged man could only look at the two of them. Mu Qing and Sherdong looked at each other and shook their heads with a bitter smile. Mu Qing stepped onto the high stage and announced the results of the inner house selection in front of all the disciples. In this inner house selection, only Lin Tian won. He is the overall first place. From now on, Lin Tian is a member of the Nanyang Martial House's inner house disciples. He will enjoy more cultivation resources. I hope the other disciples will follow his lead and cultivate diligently. Mu Qing nodded at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man carefully took out a small jade bottle. Staring at the small jade bottle, everyone's eyes widened because it contained the divine accumulation pill. It was a precious pill that could allow a 9th firmament body refinement realm expert to directly enter the divine vein realm. Even Lin Tian had some expectations. Congratulations. Mu Qing smiled and personally handed the small jade bottle that contained the divine accumulation pill to Lin Tian. Lin Tian received it with both hands and said respectfully, "Thank you, Elder. What are you thanking me for? This is what you deserve." Mu Qing shook his head and said, "Although you are now in the 9th firmament body refinement realm, you shouldn't consume it immediately. Stabilize your cultivation before using this pill." "Thank you for the reminder, Elder," Lin Tian said respectfully. Mu Qing nodded and waved her hand, indicating that Lin Tian could leave. Lin Tian bowed again and walked down from the main arena. All around, the gazes of all the Martial House disciples fell on Lin Tian. Hundreds of pairs of eyes were mixed with a variety of different emotions. Reverence, envy, jealousy, shock, fear. Kill Mo Kong, kill Zhou Hao, this guy. And Mo Kong isn't much, but Zhou Hao's death sigh. This guy is too ruthless. Ruthless? What was there to be ruthless about? A real man should be like this, repaying kindness and enmity as he pleases. Someone humphed and said, "Besides, this is a battle of life and death." That may be the case, but will the Commander-in-Chief's residents give up just because of this? Just the Mo clan alone is enough of a headache. Now that he killed Zhou Hao, the commander of Fengjian City will definitely not let him go. What are you afraid of? With the support of the martial house. So what if he's a commander? He won't dare to act recklessly in the martial house. You don't dare to mess around in the martial house. But what about outside? Can he still stay in the martial house? Someone shook his head and said, in the end, the Mo clan is nothing compared to the commander-in-chief's residence. The commander of this city is also an imperial general. Although he won't dare to be presumptuous in the martial house, he won't be too afraid of the martial house outside. But this is Fengjian City. The soldiers in the city are all subordinates of the commander. If Lin Tian is discovered outside the martial house by some of the soldiers, he will be in big trouble. This is right. No. Another senior disciple shook his head and said, he obtained the divine accumulation pill and will soon enter the divine vein realm. Although the commander-in-chief's residence is terrifying, and although there are many soldiers in Fengjian City, when he enters the divine vein realm, even if a large number of powerful soldiers meet him outside the martial house, it will be very difficult to kill him. That's right. Many disciples whispered. Lin Tian naturally heard these people's discussions, but he didn't care too much. Walking down from the main arena, not far away, Su Shu immediately came up to him. You brat, you're too bold, Su Shu said angrily. Lin Tian knew that Su Shu was worried about him. He smiled and said, I wasn't bold when I was young, but when I'm old, my courage will shrink. Su Shu glared at Lin Tian. You are misleading the public with your lies. What kind of weird logic is this? Lin Tian laughed. After a great battle, he felt good to exchange a few words with Su Shu. The inner house selection ended. Under the instructions of some mentors, the surrounding disciples dispersed. When they left, almost everyone stared at Lin Tian a few times before leaving. You have become a celebrity. Su Shu rolled her eyes. My character is good. Lin Tian smiled. Bah! Shameless! Su Shu scolded. The two of them bickered with each other and left. Behind the rockery in the distance, several inner house disciples stared at Lin Tian's back as he left. What an unexpected outcome. I really didn't expect him to defeat everyone by himself. He even killed Zhou Hao, who was at the divine vein realm. What a monster! The inner house is going to welcome a subversive man. The three of them whispered and left with the crowd. Soon, only Mu Qing and Sherdong were left in the large martial arts stage, as well as a few mentors and attendants. Mu Qing and Sherdong stood on the main arena. At this moment, the arena was stained with blood, and there were two corpses lying on the ground. One was Mo Kong, and the other was Zhou Hao. Standing there, no one spoke for a long time. After a long while, Mu Qing opened his mouth and ordered a martial house attendant, send Mo Kong's corpse to the Mo family. At the same time, warn Mo Hai that the Nanyang martial house will not bicker with him. If he dares to act recklessly, don't blame the Nanyang martial house for being ruthless and flattening the Mo family. After a pause, Mu Qing swept a glance at Zhou Hao's corpse, sent it to the commander's residence, and tell Zhou that this was a life and death battle between his son and Lin Tian. He can't blame anyone. Yes, elder. The attendant accepted the order and gathered two other people to drag Mo Kong's and Zhou Hao's corpses away. Soon, many people dispersed, leaving only Mu Qing and Sherdong behind. Standing on the arena, the two of them did not speak for a long time. What's wrong? Old man Mu, are you worried? Sherdong asked. Mu Qing shook his head. The Mo family is nothing to worry about, but the commander's residence is a little troublesome. After all, Zhou has a lot of power in the imperial army, far from what the Mo family can compare to. That Zhou, he might not dare to act presumptuously in the martial house, but outside the martial house, he won't care too much about the Nanyang martial house. Sherdong laughed. It seems like you have higher expectations for that little guy than me. You're worried about him. Oh. Mu Qing was a little puzzled. What do you mean? Sherdong said, you forgot our previous guess. This little guy has someone behind him. That may be the case, but that kind of hermit cultivator usually won't appear. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let this little guy wander into the Nanyang martial house by himself. Mu Qing shook his head. How can there be a teacher who doesn't care about his disciple? What's more, it's a treasured disciple. No matter how carefree that hermit cultivator is, he wouldn't really ignore him. Sherdong said, think about Mo. The Mo family went to the dark forest to assassinate that little guy. With that little guy's strength, how could he have survived with his own strength? Mu Qing's eyes flashed. You're saying? That's right. Sherdong nodded and said, in this world, some extremely powerful hermit cultivators will let their disciples cultivate and temper themselves. Before reaching a certain level, they won't care about them. However, nothing is absolute. If there's someone who far surpasses the disciples' cultivation to bully them, the teacher naturally can't remain silent. After pausing for a moment, Sherdong said, if I'm not wrong, that little guy lied. The so-called missing Mo is actually dead. Furthermore, he was killed by his teacher. At that time, that little guy should have walked out of the dark forest safely with the help of his teacher. Mu Qing pondered for a moment and couldn't help but nod. It was indeed very possible. The Mo family went to the dark forest to assassinate Lin Tian. It was unknown how many experts they sent. Even people like Mo and Mo Hai went. Not to mention the others. Just Mo alone was enough to suppress the entire situation. How could an expert at the peak of the ninth heaven of the divine vein realm let a body refinement realm cultivator escape unscathed? However, it was after that Lin Tian returned to the Nine Yang Martial House safe and sound, but the powerful Mo went missing. For the past month, there was no news of him. It was as if he had evaporated from the world. Thinking about it this way, other than Mo being killed, what other possibility could there be? It can be considered as him asking for it. Mu Qing sighed. Then he suddenly looked at Sherdong and smiled. Speaking of which, you old men are usually very carefree. I didn't expect you to be so meticulous today. Sherdong laughed. The brain can still be very bright, sometimes after resting often. Come on, don't brag. Mu Qing waved his hand. Speaking of which, I am indeed relieved. The Mo family is nothing. I believe that if the commander's residence goes too far, the people behind that little guy will jump out. At that time, there will be fun to watch. That kind of hermit cultivator. I'm afraid even the imperial family can't do anything about it. Fengjian City, Mo family. Trash. You can't even handle such a small matter. Mo Hai stared at Mo Kong's corpse, his face full of anger. Not only did the assassination of Lin Tian fail, but the Martial House found out the truth. This was definitely not a good thing for the Mo family. The warning of the Martial House deacon, who returned Mo Kong's corpse, was still echoing in his ears. Mo Hai's face was extremely ugly. Many of the Mo family's disciples were standing around. At this moment, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Pass down the order, withdraw the family's spies outside the Martial House. For the next period of time, be quiet. Mo Hai gritted his teeth. Although he wanted to kill Lin Tian to avenge Mo's son, he was still the head of the Mo family. Facing the warning of the Nine Yang Martial House, he didn't dare to be careless. The Nine Yang Martial House had even said something like flattening the Mo family. How could he dare to continue targeting Lin Tian? In the eyes of the Nine Yang Martial House, his Mo family was like a worm. At the same time, in the commander's residence, compared to the Mo family, the Shao family, and the Qin family, the commander's residence wasn't as luxurious. Instead, it was filled with an austere aura. The courtyard was filled with all kinds of weapons. On this day, an angry roar came from the commander's residence. Zhou He stared at Zhou Hao's corpse. His eyes were bloodshot, and killing intent surged around him. Lin Tian! Lin Tian! Ah! Zhou He roared. This was the commander's residence, and there were some generals guarding Fengjian City. Looking at Zhou Hao's corpse, many of them had sinister expressions. Chapter 92. His only son was killed just like that. Zhou He's eyes were scarlet red like a frenzied beast, emitting a shocking killing aura. We can't just let this go. We must capture that little bastard and apologize with his death. But the Martial House. So what if we can't enter the Martial House? I don't believe that little bastard won't come out As long as he dares to come out, we will take his head, many generals said gloomily. Damn it! Zhou He's roar resounded through the clouds. In the Nanyang martial house, Lin Tian and Su Shu parted ways at a fork in the road and returned to their residence. At this moment, the sky had completely darkened. Pushing open the door, Lin Tian saw a delicious meal on the table that was still emitting faint steam. Lin Tian came to Lin Shi's room and realized that Lin Shi was already asleep. Heh! With a gentle smile, Lin Tian carefully closed the door. After eating the meal prepared by Lin Shi, Lin Tian cleaned up the bowls and chopsticks and went to the top floor. After carving a few spirit-gathering runes, Lin Tian took a deep breath and started cultivating. Of course, he wasn't cultivating to increase his cultivation realm, but to stabilize it. He obtained the number 1 position in the Inner Mansion selection and obtained the Divine Accumulation Pill. As long as his cultivation realm stabilized, he could use this pill to enter the Divine Vein realm. Buzz! Night had already shrouded the land. A faint silver glow lingered on the surface of Lin Tian's body, as gentle and charming as the moonlight. The true essence in his body was nurtured in his blood, flesh, tendons, bones, and organs, forming a huge cycle. At this moment, Lin Tian circulated the 4 extremes meridian, and the true essence started to move. It flowed through his blood, flesh, tendons, and organs, connecting his entire body into a perfect circulation system of true essence that was like an endless ocean. After stabilizing my cultivation realm, I will consume the Divine Accumulation Pill and reach the Divine Vein realm as soon as possible. Lin Tian muttered to himself. Time waits for no one. Right now, he had a lot of troubles. The Mo clan and the Commander-in-Chief's residence were both extraordinary forces. He needed to quickly obtain enough strength to protect himself, and the strength of the Divine Vein realm was obviously a form of protection. Once he reached the Divine Vein realm, he wouldn't have to worry about the 2 clans anymore. It would be extremely difficult for them to kill him. It was also because of this that he did not rest after the competition and immediately began to cultivate. Buzz! Natural powers and starlight kept gathering towards the top of the pavilion. Lin Tian was circulating the 4 extreme meridians, guiding these powers and starlight into his own body. He guided them into his blood and flesh, into his bones, and into his internal organs, nourishing his body and improving his spirit, qi, and spirit. Very quickly, the night passed. Early in the morning, Lin Tian opened his eyes. He felt more comfortable all over. His realm was more stable, and his cultivation had also increased a little. Walking down from the pavilion, Lin Tian faced the rising sun and began his breathing exercises. Then, he walked towards the martial arts arena. Arriving at the training area of the martial arts arena, Luo Xiao was already waiting there, as usual. Not bad, kids. Luo Xiao greeted Lin Tian, his eyes shining brightly. Luo Xiao was naturally present at the inner house selection yesterday. He had witnessed the entire process. Lin Tian had single-handedly fought against all the elites of the outer house. He had even defeated a Divine Vein realm expert and became the only winner of the inner house selection. This glory was too dazzling. Good morning, senior. Lin Tian bowed. Luo Xiao nodded and smiled. Kid, you're the champion of the inner house selection. Instead of resting, you actually woke up so early to cultivate. Aren't you a little too hardworking? You're flattering me. Senior is stronger than me, but you still woke up so early. Lin Tian smiled. Stinking brat, don't flatter me. Luo Xiao scolded. The more he looked at Lin Tian, the more satisfied he was with him. If it was someone else who had achieved the same results as Lin Tian, they would have been cocky by now. However, Lin Tian maintained a refined and courteous attitude throughout. He was neither arrogant nor impatient. This was indeed rare. Looking at Lin Tian, Luo Xiao said, Do you still want to cultivate in the Wild Ways heavy array? Wait a moment. I'll inform the deacon guarding the array. No. Lin Tian quickly said, I want to go to the true energy condensation array. The Nine-Yang Martial House's true energy condensation array had the effect of making a martial artist's true energy more condensed and vigorous, increasing the speed of recovery. This was also another effect of solidifying a martial artist's martial foundation, making a martial artist's cultivation more solid. This way, not only would the future cultivation path be smoother, it would also allow a martial artist to have a longer battle prowess. The value of this array was very high. The reason why Lin Tian chose to enter the true energy condensation array at this time was to use this array to solidify his cultivation in a short period of time. After that, he would take the divine accumulation pill and enter the divine vein realm in one fell swoop. Only by entering the divine vein realm would he be considered to have a firm foothold in the martial house. Then, he would no longer need to hide when he left the martial house. True energy condensation array? Luo Xiao paused for a moment, then immediately understood. He smiled and said, "I understand. Good idea." Lin Tian had obtained first place in the Inner Palace election and obtained the divine accumulation pill. Luo Xiao naturally knew about this matter. He only needed to think for a moment to understand Lin Tian's intention. Wait a moment. Although Luo Xiao was in charge of the physical training of the new disciples, and although Lin Tian was already an Inner Palace disciple, Luo Xiao was very satisfied with Lin Tian. In the end, he still treated Lin Tian as his own disciple. Now that Lin Tian was here, he naturally wanted to help. Immediately, Luo Xiao spoke to the true energy condensation array's guardian. About half an hour later, a buzzing sound was heard. "All right, you can go in." Luo Xiao nodded his head at Lin Tian before continuing. "All right, you are now an Inner Palace disciple. In the future, whenever you come here, you can enter any of the formations you want, as long as you go in and greet the people guarding the formations. Furthermore, Inner Palace disciples have 20 days of cultivation time every month." 20 days? Lin Tianwei was shocked and subconsciously asked, "So good?" "Of course it's good. If it wasn't so, why would the Outer Palace disciples want to jump into the Inner Palace?" Luo Xiao nodded. "That's true, but I still feel that it's a bit exaggerated." Thinking about it, Lin Tian couldn't help but smile. The privileges of an Inner Palace disciple were indeed not small, and the cultivation resources were indeed a bit exaggerated. One had to know that the number one disciple in the Outer Palace only had 10 days of cultivation time. Furthermore, when they came, they had to request permission from the person guarding the formation. However, the Inner Palace disciples could directly request the person guarding the formation to open the formation. Furthermore, they had 20 days of cultivation time every month. Luo Xiao shook his head. "That's nothing. Other than that, every Inner Palace disciple can receive 10 fasting pills every month. One fasting pill is enough to support a cultivator for an entire day without feeling any hunger or thirst." After a short pause, Luo Xiao's expression turned solemn. The most important thing is that only Inner Palace disciples are eligible to enter the Northern Flame Imperial Courtyard. Northern Flame Imperial Courtyard? Lin Tianwei was shocked. Luo Xiao stared at Lin Tian and asked in astonishment, "You don't know about the Northern Flame Imperial Courtyard?" Looking at Lin Tian, Luo Xiao had a strange expression on his face. This disciple has been busy cultivating and has not paid attention to other things. Lin Tian was a little embarrassed. "Oh, is that so?" Luo Xiao nodded and did not probe any further. As the name suggests, the Northern Flame Imperial Courtyard is the highest martial palace in the Northern Flame country. Its scale is not something the Nine-Yang Martial Palace can compare to. The Northern Flame Imperial Courtyard has a rich collection of scriptures, countless martial skills, and endless cultivation resources. The instructors are all experts. It can be said that the Northern Flame Imperial Courtyard is a paradise for all youths who pursue the ultimate martial path. After a short pause, Luo Xiao continued, "Of course, it is also because of this that it is extremely difficult to enter the Northern Flame Imperial Courtyard. This martial palace only recruits true geniuses. Take the Nine-Yang Martial Palace as an example. The Northern Flame Imperial Courtyard comes to the Nine-Yang Martial Palace every year to recruit disciples, but only one disciple is accepted each time. Only one disciple is accepted? Lin Tian was astonished. There were plenty of geniuses in the Nine-Yang martial palace. At the very least, every inner palace disciple was an expert. Even so, the Northern Flame Imperial Courtyard only recruited one disciple every year. How high were the requirements of the Northern Flame Imperial Courtyard? Yes, only one disciple is accepted. Luo Xiao nodded and smiled. But kid, if it's you, you don't have to worry. It's only a matter of time before you enter the Imperial Courtyard. To be honest, with your talent, even in the Imperial City, there aren't many who can compete with you. You definitely won't have any problems. Senior, you flatter me. Lin Tiandao. Flatter me? Luo Xiao shook his head and said, I'm speaking the truth. A strange light flashed in Luo Xiao's eyes. Lin Tian noticed this and asked curiously, Senior has stayed in the Imperial City before? Luo Xiao nodded and sighed. Yes, I stayed there for a period of time. After a short pause, Luo Xiao shook his head and smiled at Lin Tian. All right, don't ask too much. In short, you are now an inner palace disciple. You can come here to cultivate at any time. You don't have to inform me. Go in. I hope you can enter the Imperial Courtyard soon. All right. Thank you for your guidance. Lin Tian nodded. Lin Tian bowed and walked into the True Yuan stone door. After entering the stone door, there were two martial house deacons guarding it. They nodded at him. Lin Tian returned the greeting and stepped into the array in front of him. As soon as Lin Tian stepped into the array, he was shocked. He felt the True Yuan in his body begin to drain rapidly, as if there was an external force pulling the True Yuan out of his body. This is the True Yuan condensation array? Lin Tian Wei was shocked. After thinking for a while, Lin Tian understood how to cultivate in this array. He took a deep breath and sat down cross-legged and began to circulate the four extreme scriptures. The True Yuan condensation array was to restore True Yuan while circulating the cultivation method at the same time. It was like changing the water source of a pond. While the old water was drained, new water was poured in. This would make the water in the pond clearer and without any impurities. Although there were differences between the two, the principle was the same. What a wonderful structure! Lin Tian praised inwardly. Although he could also use his true essence to restore his true essence at the same time, the difficulty of doing so was extremely high, as it consumed a great deal of energy. However, in this great array, the array allowed his true essence to flow out on its own, so he only needed to use his own cultivation method to restore his true essence, which made it much easier. Chapter 93. Lin Tian sat down cross-legged, his four extreme scripture rapidly circulating, forging new True Yuan into his body at the same time as his True Yuan was being drained, making up for the loss of True Yuan. Wang, heaven and earth Ling Qi surged into Lin Tian's body. The True Yuan condensation array had a radius of around 100 zhang and did not occupy as much space as the Wild Wolf array. It also did not have as detailed a division as the Wild Wolf array, but the two were actually quite similar. In this array, the closer one was to the center of the array, the faster one's True Yuan would be drained. I'm now around 90 zhang away from the center of the array. Circulating the four extreme scripture to restore True Yuan still cannot keep up with the rate of True Yuan loss. This array is truly not simple. Lin Tian thought to himself. Without thinking too much, Lin Tian took a deep breath and began to seriously circulate the four extreme scripture. Compared to the tempering of his body within the heavy, violent wolf formation, the cultivation within the quintessential grand formation was more or less dull. However, Lin Tian didn't mind this. The path of cultivation was filled with difficulties and dangers, so what did mere dullness count for? If he couldn't even endure this little bit of boredom, how could he ever become stronger? Very quickly, 3 hours passed. At this time, Lin Tian felt that the True Yuan loss in his body was a bit serious, about 2/3 gone. I can probably last for another 4 hours. Muttering to himself, Lin Tian continued to cultivate. Noon had long passed, and after another 4 hours, less than 10% of the True Yuan was left in his body. At this time, Lin Tian stood up and walked out of the array. Soon after, he stepped out of the range of the array. Fresh air immediately greeted him, and the feeling of true yuan loss also disappeared, making him feel much more relaxed. Lin Tian stood in place, feeling a little. He discovered that although the true yuan in his body had been reduced by 90%, the remaining 10% was much more condensed and substantial than before. It was like two lumps of cotton, one naturally piled up while the other was compressed. Although the volume was the same, the quality was different. Taking a deep breath, Lin Tian walked out. "How do you feel?" Seeing Lin Tian walk out of the true yuan condensation array, Luo Xiao smiled and asked. "Not bad," Lin Tian replied. Luo Xiao smiled and said, "The true energy condensation array has a radius of 1,000 feet. Although there is no accurate division of levels, our predecessors have summed up some experience and categorized every 100 feet as a level. Simply put, if one can reach a balance between the Zhen Yuan forging and the loss of Zhen Yuan at a distance of 10 feet from the edge, the Zhen Yuan condensation rate will increase by 20%. If one can reach a balance between the Zhen Yuan forging and the loss of Zhen Yuan at a distance of 20 feet from the edge, the Zhen Yuan condensation rate will increase by 40%, and so on. If one can reach a balance between the Zhen Yuan forging and the loss of Zhen Yuan at the center of the array, the Zhen Yuan condensation rate and the recovery rate will increase by 2 times. The more condensed a martial artist's true essence was, the longer their battle would last, and the stronger their battle strength would be. Of course, the faster one's true essence recovered, the more beneficial it was. "Thank you for your guidance, Senior." Lin Tiandao. Lin Tian roughly estimated that his current concentration of true essence had increased by about 10%. "All right, there's no need to stand on ceremony. Go back and rest. Strive to reach the divine vein realm as soon as possible," Luo Xiao said. Lin Tian smiled and nodded. After bidding farewell to Luo Xiao, he returned to his residence. It was already close to dusk. After returning to his residence, Lin Tian rested for 4 hours. At midnight, he went to the top pavilion and began to inscribe spirit-gathering runes. 1. At midnight, the stars shone brightly as they fell and intertwined around Lin Tian. After cultivating in the true energy condensation array for 10 hours, Lin Tian felt that his true essence had become much more condensed, and his cultivation realm had also become more stable. However, he was not in a hurry to consume the spirit accumulation pill. Instead, he continued to consolidate his realm. The importance of the foundation was self-evident. On this point, he would not be careless. After a night of cultivation, Lin Tianji felt that his realm had become more stable. The next morning, after eating some food, he went to the true energy condensation array again. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. On this day, Lin Tian walked out of the true essence condensing grand array, only feeling that his entire person was refreshed. In these 5 days, he could already reach the true essence refinement array at a distance of 10 zhang from the edge. His true essence refinement array had increased by 30%, and his true essence refinement array had completely stabilized. "Not bad, the changes are quite big," Luo Xiao praised. After 5 days of continuous observation, every time Lin Tian walked out of the array, there would be some changes. And this time, the changes that Luo Xiao saw were the most direct. This was the so-called quantitative change that led to a qualitative change. "It's all thanks to Senior." Lin Tian smiled. After chatting with Luo Xiao for a while, Lin Tian bid farewell and left. On the way back, Lin Tian's eyes shone with a faint light. Now was the time to break through to the divine vein realm. About half an hour later, Lin Tian returned to his residence. Without any rest, Lin Tian went straight to the top of the pavilion and operated the 4 extreme meridians, letting the true essence flow through his body over and over again. This process lasted for about an hour. After 2 hours, Lin Tianji felt that his essence, qi, and spirit had reached a new peak. Finally, he stopped cultivating. With a slight movement of his right hand, a small jade bottle appeared in his hand. Carefully uncorking the bottle, a rich fragrance suddenly wafted out. It was even richer than the fragrance of Nine Shu Essence Pill. Just smelling this fragrance, Lin Tian felt that all the pores on his body were opened up. The qi in his body even swelled a little in an instant, as if his whole body was jumping for joy. It is indeed worthy of being a treasure worth millions of spirit coins, Lin Tian thought to himself. Thinking about it, the Marshall house was really generous. They could even take out such a Baodan as a reward. He carefully took out the divine accumulation pill from the small jade bottle. This divine accumulation pill was about the same size as the Nine Shu Essence Pill. It was scarlet in color and had a fragrance. Lin Tian took a deep breath, opened his mouth, and swallowed the divine accumulation pill. The divine accumulation pill rolled down his throat into his stomach and melted like ice. At first, there was no reaction after swallowing the divine accumulation pill. However, after about 10 breaths, Lin Tian shook fiercely. He felt as if his body was burning. There was an extreme heat rising in his body, as if a volcano had erupted in his body and wanted to evaporate him. In an instant, Lin Tian's skin turned scarlet. Immediately, a sharp pain surged through his body. Calm down, Lin Tian thought to himself. Enduring the sharp pain, he closed his eyes and immersed his mind completely in his body. The sharp pain continued to spread. The medicinal efficacy of the divine accumulation pill broke out and began to crazily attack Lin Tian's body. In an instant, hundreds of small light spots lit up in Lin Tian's body, like stars in the night sky. At this time, although Lin Tian couldn't see the inside of his body, he had a very strange feeling. He could clearly feel the existence of these small light spots in his body. This feeling was as if he could know where his hands were and where his feet were even if he closed his eyes. Tao body. Lin Tian's eyes flashed with a trace of light. Tao body was the Tao body that existed in the human body. These Tao bodies were located in the energy channels of the meridians and spread throughout the body. After a martial artist reached the 9th celestial layer of body refinement, he would draw more spiritual qi into his body and stimulate the Tao body in his body. After that, he would rely on the refined meridians to connect with a group of Tao bodies to form the first divine vein. In this way, he would be able to enter the divine vein realm. This divine accumulation pill was the amalgamation of a large amount of spiritual qi. It was also the catalyst that allowed all the Tao bodies in the human body to manifest at once. At this time, all the Tao bodies had manifested, and Lin Tian could clearly sense their locations. At the same time, the divine accumulation pill dissolved and filled his body with boundless spiritual qi. Begin the first divine vein, Lin Tian muttered to himself. The human body had hundreds of Tao bodies. These Tao bodies were divided into 9 groups by the ancient people. The 9 groups of Tao bodies started from the head and ended at the 4 limbs and 5 viscera. The 4 limbs were naturally the left hand, left leg, right leg, and 5 viscera were the heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys. The human body had 2 lungs and 2 kidneys. However, the structure of the Tao bodies could still be combined into one group. In this way, the 9 groups of Tao bodies could be connected through the meridians to form 9 divine veins. At this time, Lin Tian operated the 4 extremities meridians. Relying on his instincts, he began to guide the meridians with his true yuan to form the first divine vein. For this first divine vein, he chose the Tao body with his left arm as the base. Buzz! As he operated the 4 extremities meridians, his true yuan surged into each of the meridians. Suddenly, the intense pain became more intense. At this moment, the pain spread from his head to his left arm and even to each of his fingers. It was as if there was a small person in his body, madly stabbing his body with a sharp blade. Gradually, the silver light on the surface of his body turned into a bloody light. As for the pain, it became even more intense. Continue. Lin Tian gritted his teeth and held on. He used his true essence as the needle and his meridians as the line. At this moment, he was connecting the meridians from his head to his left arm. Relying on his instincts, he connected these meridians to the small dots of light on this path. These small dots of light were the meridians of this body's God meridian. This process, every step was excruciatingly painful. However, Lin Tian's tenacity was extremely strong. Facing this kind of pain, he didn't even make a sound. In fact, the light in his eyes was even more frightening. Although this process was painful, every time he felt his meridians connect to a small dot of light, the aura in his body would become stronger. This, naturally, was a kind of motivation. Just like this, time passed minute by minute. In the blink of an eye, 6 hours had passed. Boom! At this moment, a tyrannical energy emerged from Lin Tian's body. Even with his eyes closed, Lin Tian could feel the difference in his body, especially the part from his head to his left arm. His muscles were stronger, and his blood flow was smoother. When he clenched his fist, it was filled with explosive power. It was as if he could kill a 9th-level body refinement realm expert with a single punch. Opening his eyes, Lin Tian's eyes were resplendent. I've finally entered the divine vein realm. Chapter 94. Dense Jin Yuan surged within his body, and Lin Tian felt as if his entire body had changed. His body was even more powerful, and his blood qi was even more astonishing. His body had also become much more agile. Read the full text, very good. Lin Tian's eyes flashed with a bright light as he muttered to himself. After entering the divine pulse realm, he had fewer worries. After calming down a little, Lin Tian took a deep breath and circulated the 4 extreme scripture again to consolidate his divine pulse realm cultivation. Although the 4 extreme scripture was called a body-tempering divine art, it was different from other body-tempering cultivation techniques. The 4 extreme scripture could be cultivated continuously. Not only was it an unparalleled body-tempering divine art, but it also included the cultivation techniques of the divine pulse realm, sea of consciousness realm, and flight realm. In other words, Lin Tian did not need any other cultivation techniques. In terms of cultivation techniques, the 4 extreme scripture was enough. What he really needed was various cultivation resources and powerful martial techniques. 2 hours later, the sun began to rise, and the sun began to shine. Lin Tian opened his eyes. He could feel that his divine vein realm cultivation had stabilized and was impregnable. Slightly stretching his arms, Lin Tian walked down from the top of the pavilion. Big brother? Lin Shi walked out of the room with a bowl of millet porridge. Do you want to eat now? Okay. Lin Tian smiled. Lin Shi's schedule was very regular. The millet porridge was steaming hot. It was simple, but it was very fragrant. Lin Shi ate the porridge quietly in front of the small wooden table. Occasionally, she would raise her head and glance at Lin Tian. Lin Tian naturally noticed it. After thinking for a while, he suddenly had an idea. It had been more than 3 months since he entered the Nine-Yang martial house. During this time, he had been busy cultivating and had never accompanied Lin Shi. Xiao Shi, do you want to go out and play? Lin Tian asked with a smile. Lin Shi's eyes lit up. Big brother, you're not busy? Not for the time being. Lin Tian nodded. Now that he had reached the divine pulse realm, he was no longer afraid of the Mo clan or the commander-in-chief's residence. Lin Shi was very happy and nodded repeatedly. She really wanted to go out and play with Lin Tian. Thus, Lin Tian decided to take Lin Shi for a walk outside the martial house today. He had Lin Shi make preparations, while he himself cleaned up the bowls and chopsticks. Then, he brought Lin Shi out, calling another person along the way. Going out to play? Su Shu sized up Lin Tian and frowned slightly. Why? Is there a problem? Lin Tian felt a little strange. Su Shu pulled Lin Tian over and whispered into his ear, You've offended both the Mo clan and the commander-in-chief's residence. If you go out now, aren't you afraid of being hacked to death? Lin Tian paused for a moment, then smiled and said, No, I'm not afraid now. Now! Su Shu knitted her brows and her expression suddenly changed. You've reached the divine vein realm? Yes, that's right. Lin Tian nodded and joked. Come, call me senior brother. Of course, What he got in return was Sushu's ruthless kick. Since Lin Tian had reached the divine vein realm, Sushu was no longer worried. At least, after reaching the divine vein realm, there weren't many people in Fengjian City who could really threaten Lin Tian's life. The three of them walked out of the martial house together. Inside the house, many disciples came and went. When they saw Lin Tian's group, they couldn't help but stop and whisper to each other. From time to time, they would point in their direction. Lin Tian's performance in the inner house selections was too shocking. There was no one in the martial house who didn't know him. "You've become a celebrity in the martial house," Sushu said. Lin Tian pulled Lin Shi's small hand and smiled. "My character is good. There's nothing I could do about it." "Hey!" Sushu spat. The two of them walked together. Lin Tian was on the left, Sushu was on the right, and Lin Shi was in the middle. The little girl's left hand was holding Lin Tian's right hand, and her right hand was holding Sushu's left hand. "This scene feels a little awkward," Lin Tian suddenly said. "Awkward?" Sushu felt a little strange. She glanced around and found that the scene was indeed a little awkward. It looked like a family of three. Thinking about Lin Tian's words, Sushu's face suddenly turned red. She immediately glared at him and grimaced, "Rogue, shameless, disgusting, pervert, shameless." Lin Tian was speechless. This girl didn't even need to repeat her derogatory words. The three of them walked out of the Nine-Yang martial house together. It was also at this moment that Lin Tian walked out of the martial house. Not far from the martial house, a few people's eyes flashed. "Go and report to the three generals that Lin Tian has come out," one of them said coldly. "Yes." The person beside him responded and quickly left. Fengjian City was very big, and there were countless people coming and going on the streets. There were peddlers on both sides of the street. Even though the sun was scorching, the enthusiasm of these peddlers wasn't low at all. There were candied haws, jade flower cakes, crispy sweet sausages, etc. All kinds of snacks were endless. Lin Shi widened his eyes shining brightly. "Xiaoxi, pick whatever you want." Lin Tian smiled. Lin Shi was a little happy, but she was a little hesitant. She whispered, "But brother, do we have a lot of money? We still have to live." Lin Tian Wei was stunned and couldn't help but feel a little sad. In the past 2 years, the Lin family had been annexed by the Xiao family. The siblings' lives were very difficult, even worse than those of ordinary families. In the past 2 years, Lin Shi had been very frugal. Although her life was much better now, she was still thinking about the 5 grains and miscellaneous grains. She was worried that it would affect her future life because of wastage. "It's okay. We don't lack money now, so Xiaoxi, you don't have to worry." Lin Tian smiled and said. He was afraid that Lin Shi wouldn't believe him, so he took out a small bag. There were more than 1,000 spirit coins. "So much!" Lin Shi opened her eyes wide. Even Sushu was a little surprised. 1,000 spirit coins was not a small amount, even for her, the direct disciple of a martial house elder. However, Lin Tian's attitude was as if he didn't care at all. "This guy," Sushu muttered. She always felt that Lin Tian had become a little mysterious. After Lin Tian took out a bag of spirit coins, Lin Shi was no longer worried. With so many spirit coins, it was enough for them to live for many years. At that moment, the little girl was happy. Together with Sushu, she picked this and that. Not long after, they bought a lot of things. Of course, they were all small things. The total cost was less than 20 spirit coins. "Boss, 2 pastries, 2 roasted fish. Xiaoxi, do you want snow pears?" "Yes." "Sister Sue, there's glutinous rice and lotus root. It's very fragrant and crispy." "Is that so?" "Boss, too." Lin Tian walked behind the two, paying and carrying things. As he walked, he thought about Sushu's words again. Lin Tian suddenly felt a little speechless. Why did this guy always ask for 2? Where did my share go? "Forget it." Lin Tian shook his head, while following behind the two of them. Looking at Lin Shi's face full of smiles, he already felt satisfied. Not long after, the three of them passed by a cloth shop. Sushu and Lin Shi stopped because the clothes inside were very beautiful. "Choose a few sets." Lin Tian smiled. "Good idea." Sushu nodded repeatedly. About an hour later, Sushu chose a few sets of new clothes for Lin Shi. Then, under Lin Tian's appreciation, she also chose a few sets for herself. Of course, the expenses were all charged to Lin Tian. Have a safe trip. The shopkeeper of the cloth shop looked enthusiastic. Walking out of the cloth shop, Lin Shi changed out of her previous clothes. At this time, she was wearing a pure white dress. Together with her clean cheeks, she looked like a living little princess. Beside her, Sushu was naturally not bad. After changing into the new clothes, she looked even more fresh and refined, attracting many stunned gazes from the passers-by. Seeing this, Lin Tian felt somewhat satisfied. It's still early. Shall we continue shopping? Lin Tian asked with a smile. Of course, Sushu answered without thinking. And Lin Shi also nodded vigorously. This little girl had not played so happily in a long time. Lin Tian smiled and followed behind the two girls. Wherever they went, he would follow. Thinking about it, he was glad that he brought Sushu along. Otherwise, he really didn't know how to bring Lin Shi out to play. After all, he really didn't have much experience in things like shopping. He didn't know the meaning of shopping at all. People in front, get out of the way! A cold shout rang out, accompanied by the hurried sound of horse hooves. Lin Tian tilted his head and saw 3 men in armor galloping over on horseback. These people were about 30 years old. Each of them held a long spear in their hands. The tip of the spear flickered with a cold light. Seeing this scene, the passers-by on the street turned pale with fright. They all retreated to the sides and opened up a path. The sound of horse hooves could be heard, kicking up clouds of dust. Lin Tian and the other two were at the center of the street. They were about to pull Sushu and Lin Shi to the side, but at this moment, the three of them suddenly whipped the backs of their horses, and the 3 fierce horses immediately charged forward crazily. Lin Tian's face sank. He instantly understood that these 3 people were coming for him. After reaching the divine pulse realm, all aspects of his body had improved. He had this feeling, especially when he stared into the eyes of the 3 people. He clearly felt a faint killing intent. People in front, get out of the way! One of the 3 people shouted. However, he whipped the back of his horse fiercely, and the horses sped up. In fact, one of them even raised his spear at a slanted angle, secretly preparing to attack. The 3 horses neighed, and the ground seemed to shake as they stepped on it. Lin Shi was frightened. Her face was pale with fright, and she tightly clutched the corner of Lin Tian's clothes. Lin Tian's gaze immediately turned cold. A true killing intent seeped out of his body as he stared at the 3 horses, causing them to tremble violently. They abruptly stopped, and their 3 pairs of front legs left the ground. The 3 people on their backs were flung away, and they crashed heavily onto the ground, causing thumping sounds to ring out. Lin Tian had even killed a Class 4 demonic beast. How could the 3 fierce horses resist the killing intent emitted by such a person? The 3 people fell to the ground, and one of them let out a muffled groan. The 3 people seemed to be in a sorry state. After standing up, they looked at each other and came to Lin Tian with their spears. Their faces were full of ferocity. Among them, a person who looked like the leader said eerily, obstructing military affairs. This is an unforgivable crime. Arrest them all? The 2 people behind him received the order. One of them moved and grabbed Lin Shi, who was slightly closer to him. Lin Tian's eyes turned cold. He reached out and grabbed the person's wrist. He lifted his leg and kicked the person's abdomen. With a bang, the person was sent flying with a scream. He coughed up a mouthful of blood in the air. P.S. I'm a little bit stuck. Sorry. The second update should be around 8 p.m. Chapter 95. Now that Lin Tian had entered the Divine Range realm, his strength had increased by several times. How could a mere 6th-level body, refinement realm soldier block his kick? Not dying on the spot was already considered a mercy by Lin Tian. We were ordered to deliver a letter of war to the city lord. How dare you attack us? How dare you? The leader shouted angrily. Lin Tian didn't say anything. He grabbed the man's collar and slapped him twice. Deliver a letter of war? Did these people think he was an idiot? Couldn't he feel the least bit of hostility? You! Bang! With a kick, Lin Tian sent the man flying. Among the three, the other one suddenly turned pale. He didn't expect Lin Tian to be so strong. The surrounding people stared at this scene, their eyes wide open. Who is that young man? How dare he attack the soldiers of the Empire? This. It seems that is the young master of the Lin family. Lin Tian and Lin Shi are there too. This, even if the Lin family didn't decline, they didn't have the power to contend with the army. They wouldn't dare to provoke the soldiers of the Empire, let alone now. Is Lin Tian stupid? But how did he become so strong? On the street, many people stared with wide eyes. At this moment, in the distance, the sound of hooves sounded again, and the ground shook even more. In the blink of an eye, a group of dozens of soldiers rushed over. At the front were 3 Fergana horses, each of which had a middle-aged man sitting on them. Every one of them was emitting a bloody aura that made people's heart palpitate. The 3 middle-aged men were all generals of Fengjian City. From left to right, they were Li Yundong, Qin Ping, and Zheng Yimou, all of whom were in the early stage of the Divine Range realm. What's going on? Qin Ping shouted coldly. The soldier who was kicked away by Lin Tian suddenly had his eyes lit up. He quickly stepped forward and said loudly, 3 generals, this person not only obstructed military affairs, but also attacked us. This is a complete disregard for the law. Please punish this person severely, sirs. Nonsense. When your horses were charging towards us, you fell off the back of your horses and deliberately caused trouble for us. We were just defending ourselves. Su Shu said angrily, you're the one spouting nonsense. It was clearly you who blocked the road and startled the horses. The soldier who complained pointed at Lin Tian. And him, disregarding the laws of the Empire and injuring our comrades in public is a fact. The 3 generals glanced at Lin Tian, and a sinister light flashed in their eyes. Qin Ping said coldly, take him down. Yes. As soon as this person finished speaking, a group of soldiers rushed out from behind him and pressed down on Lin Tian. Su Shu was furious. How dare you? At this moment, Lin Tian reached out and shielded Su Shu behind him. Raising his head, Lin Tian narrowed his eyes and stared at the 3 people on the Fergana horse. The commander's office? Zhou? His subordinates? Hearing this, everyone's expression changed. This person dared to call the commander's name directly? This is really, how dare he? He's going to die. He's going to die. Many people were shocked. Many people even retreated further away, afraid that they would have anything to do with Lin Tian. The commander of Fengjian City was second only to the mayor. He was in charge of all the military forces in Fengjian City and was respected by the people. Even the masters of the big families did not dare to disrespect him. But now, someone actually dared to call him by his name directly. This was a great disrespect. On the Fergana horse, the 3 people sitting upright had a cold expression. Take him down, dead or alive. Receiving this order, the group of soldiers who stepped forward were even more arrogant and cold, and they directly pressed towards Lin Tian. These soldiers were all people who had been on the battlefield before, the aura on their bodies far more terrifying than that of ordinary warriors. Right now, when this type of aura gathered together and surged over, the baleful aura was oppressive, making Lin Shi, who was next to Lin Tian, couldn't help but tremble. Brother. Grabbing the corner of Lin Tian's clothes, Lin Shi's beautiful little face was slightly pale, and she was a little scared. After all, Lin Shi was only an 8-year-old little girl right now. Looking down at Lin Shi, Lin Tian's expression became even colder. After reaching the Divine Pulse realm, he had not taken Lin Shi out for a walk for a long time, but he did not expect to encounter such a situation. Just a moment ago, Lin Shi was still smiling, but now it was replaced by fear. Su Shu, take good care of Xiao Shi, he said with a cold face. Su Shu nodded subconsciously. As a martial artist, and at such a close distance, she could clearly feel Lin Tian's anger. Immediately, Su Shu pulled Lin Shi over and carefully protected her by her side. At this moment, a group of soldiers had already arrived in front of them. "Surrender," the leader shouted. Moreover, this person held a battle spear and swung it at Lin Tian. Lin Tianyi grabbed the battle spear and shook his right hand. Instantly, a strong force passed through the body of the spear, and with a bang, the person holding the spear was sent flying. "How dare you fight back?" someone shouted from the side. Lin Tian pulled out the battle spear, and in a flash, he was in front of this person. He raised his leg and kicked out fiercely. This kick was merciless. In an instant, this person was sent flying nearly 10 feet away. He lay on the ground and did not move anymore. The expression of the group of soldiers who were walking over suddenly changed. Lin Tian was expressionless and did not say a word. He held the battle spear with one hand and swept it out like a stick. Bang! 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 The group of soldiers who were walking over was instantly sent flying like scarecrows, and blood spurted out violently. Seeing this scene, the sound of people sucking in cold air could be heard. Among them, some people happened to be martial artists, and their eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. Freak! That group of people were all at the 7th level of the body refinement realm, and they were all defeated in one blow. Amazing! Amazing! Some people's hearts palpitated. On the 3 Fergana horses, the faces of the 3 people all darkened. Chun Ping, who was in the middle, said coldly, "You beat up the imperial soldiers on the street. How dare you?" At this moment, the sound of air breaking rang out. Lin Tian threw the battle spear in his hand. With a poof, it pierced Chun Ping's right shoulder, and the remaining force carried Chun Ping's body straight off the horse's back and sent him flying. With a bang, Chun Ping landed on the ground 5 feet away, and a mouthful of essence blood spurted out. Seeing this scene, Li Yundong and Zheng Mo's expressions changed. "How dare you? Everyone, take him for me," the two of them shouted. After that, the two of them jumped off their horses and quickly went to Chun Ping's side, taking medicine to treat Chun Ping's injuries. At the same time, the soldiers behind the 3 war horses all rushed out, roaring in unison, and their battle chi was astonishing. The weakest of these people was at the 7th level of the body refinement realm, and the strongest was at the 9th level of the body refinement realm. It could be said that none of them were mediocre, and they were all strong. Lin Tian's expression was cold. He did not dodge, and he stepped forward to meet them. Bang! In an instant, the person at the front was kicked away, and he was almost half dead. These people were not weak, but compared to Lin Tian, they were as weak as babies. For a moment, screams rose and fell, and soldiers fell one after another. "Oh my God! Madman!" Many people couldn't help but swallow their saliva. At this time, the noise in this place could be said to be intense, and it attracted the attention of many people. The Yibao Pavilion was located not far from here. Although there were many ancient buildings around, the Yibao Pavilion was particularly eye-catching. At this moment, in a room on the 2nd floor of the Yibao Pavilion, Xian Yao and Pushi were discussing something. Hearing the noise, they both frowned. Xian Yao got up and walked to the window. In her sight, a young man was surrounded by dozens of soldiers, but it was as if he was walking on flat ground. When he raised his hand, there would be people flying, and when he moved his leg, there would be people screaming. What a strong young man. He even dares to provoke the imperial army. Xian Yao was a little surprised. At this time, a ray of light flashed, and Xian Yao's expression suddenly changed. "Elder Pu, come quickly." Xian Yao shouted. "What's wrong?" Pushi asked. Xian Yao stared out of the window and said without turning her head, "You'll know when you come." Pushi was a little curious. It was the first time he saw Xian Yao lose her composure like this. Pushi immediately walked over and looked outside. "Oh, this young man dares to fight with the imperial army on the street. He's quite bold." Pushi frowned. "Not this." Xian Yao shook her head and pointed out of the window. "Elder Pu, look at his right hand." Pushi was even more curious and followed Xian Yao's gaze. Suddenly, Pushi's expression changed greatly. That is, in his field of vision, The young man, who was surrounded by dozens of soldiers, was wearing a stone ring on his right middle finger. This stone ring, could it be? It can't be wrong. It's the stone ring we bought not long ago and later sold to that guy. Exing Yao's eyes lit up as if she had discovered a new continent. Pushi was finally moved. In that case, the young man who is fighting with dozens of soldiers is the black-robed young man who has the third stage array control level. Definitely, that stone ring. I can't be wrong. Xian Yao nodded vigorously. Pushi had always been calm, but at this moment his eyes were flickering. It wasn't until more than 10 breaths later that Pushi finally calmed down. Yes. Miss, you can't be wrong. Also, this is the only way to explain why this young man didn't put the Imperial Army in his eyes at all and dare to fight on the street. If this young man is really the black-robed young man, he does have the right to ignore the Imperial Army. The two of them looked out of the window and didn't speak for a long time. Young man, I've finally caught your real body. You exposed yourself. I didn't investigate you. Xian Yao clenched her fists excitedly. Coupled with her enchanting figure, her charm was unimaginable. After a pause, Xian Yao's expression turned serious. She looked at Pushi and said, "Old Pushi, go and help him when the time is right." Pushi smiled faintly. No need. No need? Xian Yao frowned. Those soldiers might not be his match, but there are 3 generals at the back. Those 3 are quite famous in Fengjian City. They might be a threat to him. Xian Yao had been in Fengjian City for a long time, so she was quite familiar with the big and small forces and some famous people in Fengjian City. Those 3 generals could be considered as famous people in Fengjian City. Pushi smiled faintly. Miss, didn't you notice? That young man has already entered the Divine Pulse realm. Hearing this, Xian Yao's expression changed greatly. Divine Pulse realm? Old Pushi, are you sure? Xian Yao was aghast. 16 years old, Divine Pulse realm. What kind of concept was this? How can this old man be wrong about this kind of thing? Pushi shook his head, and his eyes flickered. 16 years old, third stage array manipulator, Divine Pulse realm expert. This old man is more and more curious to know what kind of terrifying expert is behind this young man to be able to nurture such a monstrous disciple. End of this chapter. Chapter 96. On the streets of Fengjian City, dozens of soldiers surrounded Lin Tian. The spears in their hands were swinging vigorously, creating gusts of wind that tore through the air. No pop-up window, unfortunately. It was of no use. Bang! Lin Tian raised his leg and kicked another soldier away. The soldier fell far away, unable to get up again. Tilting his head to avoid a soldier's spear, Lin Tian grabbed the body of the spear. While sending the soldier flying, he also grabbed the spear. With a clang, the spear vibrated and sent another soldier flying. Damn it! Attack together. Use a joint attack. Form a formation. A captain shouted. On the battlefield, the Empire's soldiers would often form small formations to increase their combat strength. These formations were naturally passed down by the formation masters. They were the most superficial joint attack formations, far from being comparable to the martial rune fusion. The dozens of soldiers moved to their positions and soon formed a strange formation. Wild Python formation, the leader of the soldiers shouted. In an instant, the aura of the dozens of soldiers seemed to perfectly merge together. A powerful aura spread out, as if a heavenly python was born. It brought about a shocking hurricane, extremely frightening. On the side of the street, a warrior was moved. The wild python formation has many changes and sharp attacks. It's a joint attack formation that only the Imperial Army can use. I didn't expect to see it here. As he spoke, the warrior retreated further. Sushu was protecting Lin Shi. She was also moved when she saw this scene. She shouted, "Lin Tian, be careful. This is a joint attack formation. It can gather their attack power. Although it can't gather all of them, it can increase their combat strength by several times." Sushu was Mu Qing's disciple, so she naturally knew about the wild python formation. At this moment, the wild python formation had been formed. The dozens of soldiers gathered together, their sharp battle chi surging like flames. Old Chun, these people are indeed your elites. They can actually use the wild python formation to such an extent. It can be called a masterpiece. At the rear, Zheng Mo praised. Chun Ping's injuries had already stabilized. He smiled in satisfaction and said, "Usually, they train together. They're just very familiar with each other." Pausing for a moment, Chun Ping's gaze turned sinister as he stared at Lin Tiandao. "This little bastard killed young Master Zhou and then sneaked an attack on me while I was talking. I'll make sure he dies a horrible death." Li Yundong said, "This wild python formation should be enough to take him down. But Old Chin, you have to say hello to your elites. It's best to capture this little beast alive and let the commander kill him personally. Don't worry, when that little bastard is about to die, I will stop them," Chun Ping said. In front of them, dozens of people lined up in a row, like a shocking giant python. "Kill!" the leader of the group shouted. This was an expert at the 9th level of body refinement. He was in charge of the head of the wild python formation. "Kill! Kill! Kill!" In the wild python formation, all the people in the formation roared in unison. Their battle aura grew denser, and their killing intent grew stronger. As soon as this battle chi appeared, it was unknown how many people in the surroundings paled, their faces turning pale. Dozens of soldiers moved, like wild pythons attacking. Their momentum was unparalleled. In the face of such a joint attack, Lin Tiandao was expressionless. He just turned his right hand, and the spear in his hand flew out, piercing straight into the wild python formation. "Ah!" Screams rang out immediately. Immediately, the entire wild python formation suddenly collapsed as if it had lost its support. Behind them, the expressions of Li Yundong and the other two changed. "Impossible!" Chun Ping cried out. The wild python formation was actually broken. Not only him, but Li Yundong and Zheng Mo on the side also changed their expressions. "One blow? How is this possible?" Li Yundong was shocked. All around, the spectators on both sides of the street had already widened their eyes. What did he just do? The wild python formation was broken. Many martial artists were shocked. The joint attack formation used by the army, passed down by the array manipulator. At this moment, it was actually broken by a casual blow. Even Su Shu's eyes widened. As Mu Qing's last disciple, she knew very well that the wild python formation was not simple. Although Lin Tiandao was an expert of the divine pulse realm, it should take some effort to break this large formation. But at this moment, what shocked her was that Lin Tianji had just casually thrown the spear in his hand and actually defeated the wild python formation. Further away, on the second floor of Yi Bao Pavilion, Xen Yao and Pu Shi had been paying attention to the battle on the street. "A snake hits its weak point, one blow is enough." Pu Shi laughed, showing off such a joint attack in front of a third-tier array manipulator. Childish. Xen Yao snorted. As soon as the wild python formation was broken, the dozens of soldiers' faces suddenly changed, and they all seemed to have become headless flies. This was the weakness of the combined formation technique. Although this kind of formation technique could gather the battle prowess of the people in the formation together and increase their battle prowess, the instant the formation was broken, it would cause the people in the formation to fall into chaos for a short period of time. They would be like wild beasts that had lost their vision, and their individual battle prowess would be greatly reduced. "Damn it! Regroup the formation! Quick!" a soldier shouted. Lin Tianyi flashed and rushed straight in. Facing dozens of soldiers, Lin Tianyi was expressionless and merciless. With every punch and kick, the soldiers would scream and fly away. In the end, he even used the shadow fist. With one punch, 18 fist shadows flew out. Bang! 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 The sound of fists falling on flesh echoed constantly, and screams could be heard from time to time. In the blink of an eye, dozens of soldiers were all sent flying and lying on the ground in disorder, wailing incessantly. Looking at this scene, everyone on both sides of the street gasped at the same time. He had single-handedly wiped out a group of dozens of soldiers. These were all from the imperial city. How dare he? An angry roar sounded. Many people were shocked. They turned their heads and saw Chun Ping's gloomy face. Li Yundong and Zheng Yimou, who were standing beside Chun Ping, also had cold eyes. The three generals of Fengjian City, Chun Ping, Li Yundong, and Zheng Yimou, are all powerhouses of the divine range. That young man is in trouble. Can't he be patient in front of the imperial city? Many people swallowed their saliva. However, when these people turned their heads to look at Lin Tianyi, they couldn't help but be stunned. After sweeping away dozens of soldiers, Lin Tianyi didn't stop at all. He was actually closing in on Chun Ping and the other two. What is he going to do? Many people couldn't help but narrow their eyes. Looking at this scene, Xan Yao and Pu Shi on the second floor of the Yi Bao Pavilion couldn't help but smile. It was a good show to watch. Xan Yao smiled. For a moment, she was full of charm. On the streets of Fengjian City, Lin Tianyi closed in on Chun Ping and the other two. His eyes were cold, and his voice was even colder. You three pieces of trash really pissed me off. Everyone had something that they couldn't touch, just like a dragon's reverse scale. For Lin Tianyi in this life, Lin Shi was undoubtedly his reverse scale. This well-behaved, sensible, and considerate little girl was his only family member now. During these 3 months, he didn't fulfill any of his responsibilities as an older brother, didn't accompany Lin Shi. It was to the extent where it was often Lin Shi who cooked for him, delivered to his room, just like when he first arrived in this world. Now that he had reached the divine range realm, he took Lin Shi out to play. He didn't expect that Lin Shi, who was originally happy, would be frightened by this group of soldiers. This made him extremely angry. In a flash, Lin Tianyi appeared in front of the three people. Such speed caused the three of them to be shocked. Chun Ping raised his hand and grabbed the hilt of the broadsword at his waist, ready to pull it out. But at that moment, Lin Tianyi's right leg landed on his chest, and he flew backward like a meteor. He couldn't help but let out a painful groan. Li Yundong and Zheng Mo's expressions changed. They reached out to grab Lin Tianyi. But they weren't as fast as Lin Tianyi. Lin Tianyi reached out his left hand and grabbed Li Yundong's wrist. With a little force, Li Yundong was suddenly flipped over and then fell to the ground. At the same time, Lin Tianyi raised his right hand and slapped Zheng Mo's cheek. With a smack, Zheng Yimou was sent flying. A tooth fell out, mixed with blood. "Damn it! How dare you hit us?" Li Yundong roared. Lin Tianyi stared down at Li Yundong, his voice cold. "How dare I kill you?" He raised his leg and mercilessly kicked Li Yundong in the stomach. With a bang, Li Yundong flew across the ground and hit a pillar not far away. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Oh my God! Where did this immortal come from? How can he be so strong? Those three generals are all in the Divine Pulse realm. Many martial artists were shocked. 3 Divine Pulse realm cultivators were standing together, but they were sent flying by a kick so easily. Generals! Many of the soldiers were also shocked. They stared at Lin Tianyi again, fear in their eyes. Is this man a monster? He looks so delicate, but his strength is so terrifying that he can send 3 generals flying with a kick. Chun Ping and the other 2 struggled to their feet, their faces pale. Damn it! Chun Ping's eyes were cold, and he was furious. On the other side, Li Yundong and Zheng Yimou looked equally embarrassed. The 3 of them were the 3 generals of Governor Feng. They were powerful and famous, second only to the governor and the commander-in-chief. Everyone in Governor Feng knew them. But now, they were kicked away by a young man. It was humiliating. If I don't kill you, Chun Ping, am not human. Chun Ping said coldly. Is that so? Lin Tianyi's eyes turned cold. Then you should stop being a human. Be a beast in your next life. Lin Tianyi stomped on the ground with his right leg, and a battle spear flew up into the air. Lin Tianyi grasped the spear in his hand and used the lightning sword to control it. The spear cut through the air as fast as lightning. Puff! In an instant, blood splattered everywhere as the spear pierced through Chun Ping's chest like a beam of light. That violent force dragged Chun Ping's corpse all the way until it was nailed to a stone wall 130 feet away. Blood dyed the wall red. Seeing this scene, some people immediately screamed, "Murder! Murder! Murder!" Many people trembled in fear. Most of the people around were ordinary civilians. Seeing this scene, how could they not be afraid? Chapter 97. Chunping's body was nailed to the wall in the distance. Blood flowed out. It was a shocking scene. A divine pulse realm powerhouse was killed just like that. How dare you kill an imperial general? Li Yundong's expression changed. On the other side, Zheng Mo's expression was also ugly. Don't try to scare me with the imperial general. In my eyes, you are nothing. You are meaningless. Looking at the two indifferently, Lin Tian's voice was very cold. Didn't you put on this show together to kill me, for Zhou? You came to kill me, and I killed you. It's fair and reasonable. What's wrong with that? Lin Tianyi could see the purpose of the three at a glance. He killed Zhou Hao, and Zhou Hao was the son of Commander Zhou He. As soldiers under Zhou He, they were obviously here to kill the commander. As for the three soldiers who rushed at him at the beginning, they were just the fuse that the three had prepared. They just wanted an excuse to deal with him. You? Li Yundong's face suddenly turned livid. Lin Tian was right. They were here to kill Lin Tian. Staring at the two, Lin Tian's eyes were cold. He stepped forward step by step. If it were any other time, I might have just let it go. But you really know how to pick a time to provoke me at this time. Do you think I'm easy to bully? Lin Tian had always adhered to the principle that if others didn't offend him, he wouldn't offend them. These three generals wanted to kill him, so he naturally wouldn't show mercy. What's more, because of these three people, Lin Shi was frightened. This was something he couldn't tolerate no matter what. As an elder brother, how could he let his sister be wronged? Staring at the two, he stepped forward step by step, not hiding his killing intent at all. Meeting Lin Tian's gaze, Li Yundong and Zheng Mo both trembled. Together, Li Yundong and Zheng Mo looked at each other, nodded at the same time, and pulled out their weapons. Li Yundong used a sword, and Zheng Mo used a spear. Clang! For a moment, two ear-piercing sounds of weapons rang out. Kill! The two roared and rushed toward Lin Tian at the same time. For a time, intense true essence fluctuations intertwined, extremely shocking. Li Yundong brandished his long sword. The sound of the sword was ear-piercing, and the shadow of the sword was everywhere, carrying a fierce, murderous aura. On the other side, the long spear in Zheng Mo's hand was even more domineering. The spear was like a dragon, shocking people. So strong. Some martial artists were surprised. Was this the strength of a divine, vain realm general? It was indeed terrifying. Li Yundong's sword was very long and wide, so it was naturally stronger than ordinary swords. At this moment, the blade in his hand was suffused with a faint blood-red light, and the murderous aura was even more intense. It mercilessly slashed toward Lin Tian. This sword strike caused the air to hiss. Lin Tian's face was expressionless. His body swayed slightly, and he easily avoided the attack. At the same time, he slapped the sword with his palm. Clang! All of a sudden, the sword whistled. Li Yundong felt his hand go numb, and his expression changed. At this moment, Zheng Mo's spear arrived. Like a wild dragon, it went straight for Lin Tian's face. At this moment, the tip of the spear was only 10 feet away from Lin Tianji. There was absolutely no possibility of him dodging. Kill! Zheng Mo's eyes flashed, and he couldn't help but shout coldly. Suddenly, the spear moved faster, and its aura became even more terrifying. In an instant, it appeared 3 feet away from Lin Tian. Die! Zheng Mo shouted loudly. This attack had succeeded. At this moment, Lin Tian moved. He simply raised his right hand and grasped the incoming spear. Suddenly, the spear stopped. The tip of the spear was only half a foot away from his face. You! Zheng Mo's expression changed. He urged the spear with all his might, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't make it move an inch. He couldn't even pull the spear back. On the other side, Li Yundong's expression changed. He leaped up and slashed down with his sword. Lin Tian moved slightly. He held the spear and turned it, blocking Li Yundong's sword. The spear and sword collided with a crisp clang. Li Yundong retreated. Zheng Mo's hands were numb from the impact of Li Yundong's sword. Lin Tian held the end of the spear with one hand and stared coldly at the two men. Since you're here for Zhou Hao's death, then you should know that I killed him when I was in the 9th level of the body refinement realm. Now that I've entered the divine vein realm, how dare you provoke me? Do you really think that your status as a general can protect you? As he spoke, he shook his right hand. Instantly, a fierce force passed through the spear and shook Zheng Mo's hands away. He easily blocked the joint attack of two generals. Everyone's hearts trembled. Just how strong was he? Li Yundong and Zheng Mo stared at Lin Tian again. Their expressions turned ugly, and they didn't dare to act rashly. A moment later, they seemed to have come to the same decision. They looked at each other and nodded. Very well. Let's call it quits for today. However, you will pay a heavy price for killing Chen Ping. Li Yundong said coldly. He and Zheng Mo were not weak, and they were people who had been on the battlefield. After a few simple exchanges, they understood how terrifying Lin Tian was. They were definitely not a match for him. Retreating now was the best choice. With that, Li Yundong and Zheng Mo turned around and left. Whoosh! A spear flew over and stabbed in front of the two men. Let's call it quits? Lin Tianling laughed. Who do you think I am? You came when you wanted to kill me, and you left when you couldn't beat me? Staring at Lin Tian, many people couldn't help but gasp. How dare this person be so domineering? Some martial artists' hearts trembled. Facing the generals of the empire, he actually had such an attitude. It was really shocking. Li Yundong and Zheng Mo's expressions were particularly ugly. You still want to kill us? I already said that you came to kill me, and I'll kill you. It's fair and reasonable. Lin Tianling said coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, his feet moved slightly, and in an instant, he was in front of Li Yundong. Li Yundong was shocked by Lin Tian's monstrous speed. However, he was, after all, a person who had been on the battlefield. Although he was shocked, his movements were not slow. He raised his long sword and slashed at Lin Tian. Lin Tianling snorted. His right hand grabbed Li Yundong's sword-holding hand and twisted violently. Suddenly, there was the sound of bones breaking, and the long sword in Li Yundong's hand was easily snatched away. Die, he said coldly. With a wave of the long sword, blood rose, and Li Yundong's throat was directly cut open. Li Yundong fell to the ground with a bang. His eyes were wide open, and he opened his mouth to say something, but he couldn't spit out a word. Instead, blood kept gushing out, and his whole body convulsed. However, after only 10 breaths, Li Yundong was completely still. After killing Li Yundong, Lin Tian acted as if nothing had happened. He tilted his head and looked behind him. At some point, Su Shu had covered Lin Shi's eyes. Lin Tian's heart warmed. He nodded to Su Shu in thanks. He didn't want Lin Shi to see such a bloody scene. He turned his head again and looked at Zheng Mo. Without a word, he closed in on the other party. You. Zheng Mo trembled. He wanted to run, but he was afraid of losing face. If he didn't run, he would lose his life. For a moment, his expression was extremely ugly. At this time, Lin Tian was completely close. Clang! The ear-piercing sound of a sword rang out, and the killing intent was overwhelming. Zheng Mo no longer cared about face. He turned around and ran. The Imperial General actually ran away? Many people were stunned. Lin Tian stopped, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He kicked up a spear beside his feet. Instantly, the spear seemed to have turned into a bolt of lightning as it flew out and pierced into Zheng Mo's chest. Ah! Zheng Mo screamed. The spear dragged him 7 zhang away, and he fell to the ground with a bang. Blood flowed out and quickly dyed the ground red. Zheng Mo struggled on the ground for a moment. In the end, like Li Yundong, he stopped moving. For a moment, the surroundings were silent. Many people's lips trembled, and they couldn't say a word for a long time. especially the ordinary soldiers who had been defeated by Lin Tian. Their faces were pale, and fear was written all over their faces. The three divine Vein Realm generals had all been killed. Lin Tian glanced at the corpses of Zheng Yimou and the other two. He casually threw away the sword in his hand and walked toward Lin Shi and Su Shu. "Xiaoxi, let's go back," he said softly. After such a thing happened, whether it was him, Lin Shi, or Su Shu, they probably weren't in the mood to continue playing. "Oh," Lin Shi answered softly. Su Shu had noticed before Lin Tiansha had killed Qin Ping. She had covered Lin Shi's eyes, so Lin Shi hadn't seen Lin Tiansha. Lin Tian took Lin Shi's hand, then turned to Su Shu and smiled gratefully. "Let's go." Su Shu snorted. Lin Tian took Lin Shi's hand and told Lin Shi not to look back. Soon they left. Only when Lin Tian was completely gone did the crowd let out a sigh of relief. "Oh my God, this is going to be a big mess." 3 Divine Pulse Realm generals were killed just like that, killing the generals of the Empire on the street. That young man is simply a madman. Many people's hearts trembled, breaking the wild python formation, sweeping through dozens of soldiers, and killing 3 Divine Pulse Realm generals. This was definitely a super earthquake that would shake the entire Fengjian city. That Lin Tian is already so strong. This is unimaginable. The change is too big. Compared to before, this is a completely different person. Many of the Fengjian city locals were terrified. The dozens of soldiers on the ground trembled as they stood up. Each of them had a pale face. Some of them picked up the corpses of Qin Ping and the others, and a group of people quickly left. Looking at the back of this group of soldiers hurriedly leaving, the crowd couldn't help but sigh. These soldiers of the Empire were usually so high and mighty because they represented the power of the Empire. Ordinary people didn't dare to provoke them. But today, a delicate young man swept through dozens of people on the street and killed 3 Divine Pulse Realm generals. Looking at the bloodstains on the ground, many people suddenly felt a chill down their spines. "Too ruthless, too arrogant," someone murmured. On the second floor of the Yi Bao Pavilion, by the window, Xing Yao and Pushi's eyes flashed with a strange light. "That guy is quite gentle. I didn't expect him to have such a ruthless side. He actually killed Qin Ping and the others on the street." Xing Yao whispered to herself. Pushi thought for a moment and said, "I'm afraid that those 3 people touched something they shouldn't have." "What's something they shouldn't have touched?" Xing Yao was curious. "Miss, didn't you notice? After that little brother killed Li Yundong, he turned around and looked behind him. His gaze fell on the little girl in the white dress. After he killed Zheng Yimou, he immediately went to the little girl and took her away. When he looked at the little girl, the concern and doting in his eyes were obviously very strong." Pushi said in a deep voice. Xing Yao frowned. But that girl looked like she was just a little frightened and didn't suffer any real injuries. That guy wouldn't kill people on the street for such a small thing, right? Moreover, he killed 3 Divine Pulse Realm generals. "For some people, this is more than enough," the old man said. Pushi shook his head and said, "Legend has it that there is a scale on the neck of a dragon that is upside down. If anyone touches it, the dragon will kill them. Miss, do you understand what I mean?" Xing Yao's body trembled slightly, and she whispered to herself, "The dragon has a reverse scale. Anyone who touches it will die." Chapter 98. Fengjian City was in an uproar. A young man killed 3 generals on the street. This news spread throughout the city in the blink of an eye, shocking countless people. Is this true? It can't be. Who dares to be so bold? Is he tired of living? Oh my God, this world is too crazy. This city is going to be in chaos. The 3 generals of Fengjian City were all retired soldiers from the battlefield. They are people of the Empire. Both the commander and the city lord will not sit idly by. They will definitely make the murderer pay a heavy price. Everyone was shocked. The 3 generals were killed. This was a huge matter. The commander's residence naturally received the news immediately. Moreover, Dozens of soldiers brought the corpses of the 3 generals to the commander's residence. "Commander-in-Chief, please avenge the 3 generals," a soldier shouted. Looking at the 3 corpses, he was furious. His son was dead. Now, his 3 most capable subordinates were killed by the same person. What a little bastard. You have guts. This time, let's see who can protect you. He's face was extremely gloomy. He roared, "Men, go and report to the city lord. Gather all the troops and go to the Nanyang Martial House to arrest him." "Yes," a soldier responded and quickly ran out. He's eyes were filled with killing intent. He clenched his fists and said, "However, just you wait. I will avenge you soon. I will personally kill that little bastard in front of your tombstone." Today's matter was planned by him. Although it didn't succeed, the 3 generals were killed. He had enough reason to lead the troops to arrest Lin Tian. A war horse with a bloody aura rushed out of the commander's residence. The horse was extremely fast and rushed madly towards the city lord's residence. This scene was seen by many people. Some of the smarter ones suddenly had a thought. They smelled the scent of war. "It's really going to be chaotic," someone muttered to himself. Lin Tian pulled Lin Shi back to the martial house. He tidied up the things that Su Shu and Lin Shi bought. There were quite a lot of things, but they were all small things. "Thank you so much for today." Lin Tian looked at Su Shu and said. He was referring to how Su Shu had blindfolded Lin Shi when he was killing people. Although this action was small, it had great significance. Su Shu frowned and said, "You still have the nerve to say that. Don't you think before you act? Lin Shi is still young. She can only rely on you, her big brother. If Lin Shi sees you killing people, she will be sad and scared. Do you want Lin Shi to have nightmares every day? Do you want Lin Shi to fear you?" Lin Tianyi was embarrassed. "You're right. I didn't think it through." As she spoke, Lin Tian looked towards Lin Shi's room. The little girl was decorating her room with some small things that she had bought in the city. He looked at Lin Shi with a gentle smile on his face. "All right, stop looking. Let's think about other things." Su Shu curled her lips and said, "Other things? What things?" Lin Tian was curious. "What things?" Su Shu gritted her teeth and looked like she wanted to bite someone. "You killed 3 generals on the street. This is 1,000 times more serious than killing Zhou Hao. Do you think he will let it go? Killing those 3 generals is just an excuse for him to deal with you. Even the martial house can't protect you after committing such a crime." Thinking about the consequences of this matter, Su Shu was even more angry. "Why are you always so impulsive? They scared Xiaoxi and wanted to kill me. Of course, I had to fight back. Our parents didn't raise us to be bullied. Lin Tianyi didn't care at all. You." Su Shu stared at Lin Tian. "I'm talking about serious business." "I'm also talking about serious business." Lin Tian stared at Su Shu and suddenly laughed. "Little Su Shu, are you afraid that I'll die? Who's afraid that you'll die? You can die now. I'll take good care of Lin Shi for you." Su Shu gritted her teeth. Lin Tian smiled and couldn't help but laugh. "What are you laughing at?" "Nothing, nothing." Lin Tian shook his head and said with a smile, "Anyway, don't worry. It's best that he stays quiet. If he wants to do something, I'll give him a surprise." Su Shu stared at Lin Tian. "What is this guy talking about? Do you have a fever?" Su Shu reached out to touch Lin Tian's forehead. Lin Tianyi was speechless. He took away Su Shu's hand from his forehead. "Don't worry. I'm normal. Don't worry. Sister Su," a sweet voice sounded. Lin Shi was calling for Su Shu in the room. They didn't know what it was about. Lin Tian glanced over and then looked at Su Shu with a smile. "Thank you for taking care of my sister. I like her. It has nothing to do with you." Su Shu snorted. After that, she got up and walked to Lin Shi's room. Right now it was noon. The 3 of them bought quite a few ingredients. Lin Shi and Su Shu worked together. Not long after, a fragrant meal was placed on the table. "You're indeed my sister. You're so good at cooking," Lin Tian praised. "Hey, there's still me. We made it together." Su Shu was dissatisfied. Right, I almost forgot," Lin Tian said with a smile. "Speaking of which, I'm quite surprised that you know how to cook." "What do you mean?" Sushu gritted her teeth and glared at Lin Tian. Lin Tian blushed with shame. He was really just a little surprised. However, it seemed that Sushu took this sentence as a joke. The meal ended quickly. After cleaning up the dishes, Lin Tian reminded Lin she not to run around. Then he walked out with Sushu. "Where are you going?" Sushu asked. Lin Tian Dao. "The inner house election has ended a few days ago. I should go to the inner house to report." "It's rare that you can think of this." Sushu was surprised. Lin Tian. At a fork in the road, Lin Tian and Sushu parted ways and walked towards the inner house. The Nine-Yang martial house was divided into the inner house and the outer house. Compared to the outer house, the inner house had a cultivation area. The cultivation environment and living conditions of the inner house disciples were much better than the outer house disciples. In addition, there were various privileges and cultivation resources. Therefore, entering the inner house was the dream of all the disciples. Lin Tian passed through a few corners and quickly arrived at the inner house. There were 2 deacons guarding the gate. Lin Tian handed over his identity jade card that had already refreshed. The 2 deacons were surprised. "You are that Lin Tian?" "That's me." Lin Tian nodded. The 2 deacons looked at Lin Tian strangely and handed the jade card back. "It's fine. Go in." Lin Tian was a little puzzled, but he didn't ask. He put away the jade card and stepped in. After registering in the inner house, Lin Tian came to the inner house cultivation area. The elder in charge of the inner house reminded him that the inner house disciples spent most of their time cultivating in the inner house cultivation area. When he entered the cultivation area, he saw 3 men. Among the 3, one of them had a sturdy physique. He was waving his fists and fighting with a long-robed youth. Not far away, a black-robed youth was standing with his arms crossed, watching the 2 fight. Bang! 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 The sturdy youth and the long-robed youth were fighting. The sound of fists and palms colliding could be heard constantly, like the beating of a drum. Lin Tian was secretly surprised. These 2 people were very strong. "Stop. That's all for today." The long-robed youth's voice sounded. The burly young man smiled and stopped. At this time, Lin Tian stepped forward. "3 senior brothers, I am a new disciple in the inner house. My name is..." However, before he could finish his words, the young man in a long robe took a step forward and appeared in front of him. "Junior brother Lin Tian," the long-robed youth said. Not far away, the sturdy youth and the black-robed youth also tilted their heads and looked over. Lin Tian was a little surprised. "Senior brother, you know me?" After all, he was a new disciple. Logically speaking, the person in front of him was his senior brother. Lin Tian naturally would not be rude. "I know, of course I know." The long-robed youth smiled. "During the inner house selections, the 3 of us went to watch. Your last battle was really wonderful." Lin Tian said modestly. "Senior brother, you flatter me." While speaking, Lin Tian was a little surprised. These 3 powerful inner house disciples actually went to watch the battle in person. At this time, the sturdy youth walked over and took the initiative to extend his right hand to Lin Tian. He smiled. "Hello, junior brother Lin. I am Tian Zhe. You can call me senior brother Tian, or just call me Tian Zhe." Lin Tian reached out and shook hands with Tian Zhe. "Hello, senior brother Tian." This Tian Zhe seemed to be a straightforward person, easily making people feel close to him. Tian Zhe smiled and said, "The guy in front of you is called Tao by a palm user." After a pause, Tian Zhe pointed to the black-robed youth on the other side. "That guy is called Kong Heng, a sword user like you, the 2nd strongest disciple in the inner house." After Tian Zhe finished speaking, Kong Heng nodded to Lin Tian, then looked to the other side. "Don't mind, this guy has always been cool like this." The young man in long robes, Tao Bai, patted Lin Tian on the shoulder and leaned over. "Let me tell you a secret. When he was watching your battle, this guy had a very high evaluation of you. He even said that your comprehension of sword arts is something that even he is unable to compare to." "Talk too much." Kong Heng snorted. The inner house was not as big as the outer house, but the environment was very good, and the air was very fresh. Tao Bai stood beside Lin Tian, introducing some people and things in the inner house to Lin Tian. At this time, in the corridor not far away, a purple-robed youth walked by. "Senior Brother Su," Tao Bai shouted, "there is a new disciple in the inner house, the only one who entered this year. Senior Brother, you should come and say hello." The purple-robed youth stopped, glanced at Lin Tian, and said coldly, "There is no need for a dying man." After saying that, the purple-robed youth walked away and soon disappeared from their sight. "Tisk, arrogant guy," Tao Bai said unhappily. Lin Tian stared at the purple-robed youth, not caring about his attitude, but a little concerned about the purple-robed youth's words. He looked at Tao Bai and said, "Senior Brother, what does he mean by dying man?" "This." Staring at Lin Tian, Tao Bai was stunned. "You don't know." Not only Tao Bai, but even Tian Zhe and Kong Heng looked at Lin Tian with a strange expression. "I don't know." Lin Tian shook his head. He really did not know what was going on. Tao Bai was speechless. "Junior Brother Lin, no." "Brother Lin, you are wrong." "Ancestor Lin, how can you not know what you have done?" Spreading out his hands, Tao Bai continued, "You killed 3 generals in the streets of Fengjian City, causing a storm in the city. This is a big deal, super big trouble." Chapter 99. Tao Bai called it big trouble, but it was already very tactful. If he were to say it bluntly, it would be a matter of losing his head. Hearing Tao Bai's words, Lin Tian suddenly understood and whispered, "So it's about this." He suddenly remembered that when he entered the inner palace, the 2 deacons looked at him strangely. It turned out that the news of him killing Qin Ping and the other 2 had already spread to the Nanyang Martial House. Seeing Lin Tian's expression, Tao Bai was slightly surprised. "You're not worried at all?" "I'm not worried," Lin Tian said. "I don't think I did anything wrong. They asked for it." Tao Bai and the other 2 looked at Lin Tian and saw that Lin Tian's expression was calm, without the slightest pretense of calmness. A strange light flashed in their eyes. "Brother Lin is indeed extraordinary." Tao Bai smiled. Lin Tian shook his head. "You flatter me, Senior Brother." Tao Bai waved his hand and said, "Don't be so formal. Let's be casual. Don't call me Senior Brother or Junior Brother. We're about the same age, so just call me by name." "Okay." Lin Tian smiled. He was not the kind of person who was too formal. "Brother Lin just entered the inner palace. How about this? The 3 of us will take you around the inner palace." Tian Zhe suggested. Lin Tian nodded. "Okay, then I'll have to trouble you." "It's my pleasure." Tian Zhe smiled. The 3 of them took Lin Tian to familiarize himself with the inner palace and briefly talked about the daily life of the inner palace disciples. Of course, the most important thing was the resources of the inner palace disciples. We inner palace disciples have 4 advantages. First, we don't have a time limit to choose martial skills. Second, we can receive 10 fasting pills every month. Third, we can accumulate 20 days of cultivation in the Wild Wave Heavy Array and True Energy Condensation Array. Fourth, only inner palace disciples are qualified to participate in the Imperial Courtyard selection. Lin Tian nodded. He had already heard about these things from Luo Xiao. Next, let's talk about the inner house members. Tao Bai said, "There are a total of 29 people in the inner house. Including you, there are exactly 30 people. Among these 30 people, there are 10 at the 8th level of the refinement realm, 9 at the 9th level of the refinement realm, 6 at the early stage of the divine range realm, 4 at the 2nd level of the divine range realm, and 1 at the 3rd level of the divine range realm." Lin Tian was moved. Although there weren't many inner palace disciples, each and every one of them was an elite. Even the weakest was at the 8th body refinement layer. He carefully observed Tao Bai and the other 2 and discovered that Tao Bai and Tian Zhe were at the early stage of the divine range, while Kong Heng was at the 2nd stage of the divine range. Lin Tian suddenly recalled the purple-clothed youth from before. That purple-clothed young man, could he be? Lin Tian asked Tao Bai. He remembered that Tao Bai had addressed the purple-clothed youth as Senior Brother. Tao Bai nodded and said, "Su Muyang, peak of the 3rd level of the divine range. the #1 in the inner palace. Very arrogant. After pausing for a moment, Tao Bai suddenly approached Lin Tian. Just a friendly reminder, Su Mian's relationship with MOG is not bad, you know? Most people in the Marshall house knew about the grudge between Lin Tian and the Mo family, and Tao Bai was naturally no exception. Many thanks. Lin Tian nodded, naturally understanding Tao Bai's good intentions. Tao Bai waved his hand, indicating that he didn't need to care. Tao Bai and the other two were around 18 years old. Except for Kong Hang, who didn't like to talk much, Tao Bai and Tian Zhe were very friendly. Walking with these three, Lin Tian didn't feel awkward. Very soon, the three people brought Lin Tian to tour the entire inner palace. I've really troubled you guys today. Lin Tiandao thanked them. He had been in the inner palace for an hour and had already registered everything. He had also received the fasting pills, so he wanted to go back first. Brother Lin, are you not moving to the inner palace district? Tao Bai asked. The inner palace disciples all had their own residences in the inner palace district, and the conditions were much better than the outer palace disciples' residences. Most importantly, living in the inner palace district meant that their daily cultivation would be much better. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. No. Lin Tian shook his head and smiled. I'm used to the old place. I didn't expect Brother Lin to be such a nostalgic person. I like this kind of person, the most suitable to be friends. Tao Bai smiled. After pausing for a moment, Tao Bai's face became slightly more solemn. This may be a bit abrupt, but Brother Lin, are you really not worried about today's matter? Or do you already have a way to deal with it? After Tao Bai said this, Tian Zhe also looked at Lin Tian, and even Kong Hang was no exception. Lin Tian paused for a moment and smiled. You can say that. The three were stunned for a moment. Then they also smiled. That's good, Tao Bai said. After all, the three of them appreciated Lin Tian and didn't want Lin Tian to die prematurely. Lin Tian chatted with the three for a while, and after a while, he waved his hand and bade farewell. Not long after, Lin Tian returned to the Marshall house and started to pack his things. Now that I have reached the Divine Vein Realm, I should go and pick a Divine Vein Realm martial technique. Lin Tian muttered to himself. The Sky Thunder Sword art was powerful enough, but it was only 30% and he had already finished cultivating it. After thinking about it, he decided to pack his things and go to the martial arts library. Fengjian City streets extended in all directions, and 4 hours after noon, all the streets shook. Armored horses trampled on the streets, raising dust. Dense groups of soldiers appeared from all 4 directions of Fengjian City. The momentum was so strong that some ordinary people were so shocked that their faces turned pale. What happened? Could it be that an empire is invading? Many ordinary people were terrified. However, some martial artists noticed something strange. These people seem to be Fengjian City soldiers, and they are marching towards the Nine Suns Martial House. Many people were shocked and quickly connected the dots to what happened in the morning. It is said that the young man who killed the 3 generals of Fengjian City was a disciple of the Nine Suns Martial House. Are these soldiers going to the Nine Suns Martial House to ask for him? Look over there, it's Commander Zhou He. Also, the city lord. Many people were shocked. On the streets of Fengjian City, there were more than 1,000 Empire soldiers. Every one of them had a cold expression, and they were wearing military armor. At the front of these soldiers were 2 war horses, and 2 middle-aged men were sitting on them. One of them was tall and sturdy, and his aura was shocking. He was Zhou He. The other person was slightly chubby, but his aura was not weaker than Zhou He. In fact, it was even stronger. He was the city lord of Fengjian City. Just a while ago, Zhou He had ordered someone to inform the city lord of Lin Tiansha's death. The city lord of Fengjian City was so angry that he smashed a mahogany table. Chen Ping and the other 2 were Divine Vein Realm experts, and they were second only to the commander in Fengjian City. Now that they had been killed on the streets, how could the city lord of Fengjian City not be angry? The city lord of Fengjian City had given his consent to Zhou He gathering troops and heading to the Nine Suns Martial House. After all, they were going to the Nine Suns Martial House to ask for their man. Stomp. Stomp, stomp. The sound of armored horses trampling on the streets could be heard, and sand was kicked up. On the second floor of Bao Pavilion, Pushi and Xing Yao were naturally alarmed by the noise. Elder Pushi, this is... Xing Yao squinted her eyes and asked. Pushi nodded. The three of them are not ordinary. These people are probably going to the martial house to ask for their men. Xing Yao's eyes lit up. If the city lord and the commander are going to the martial house to ask for their men, the Nine Sons martial house might not be able to protect that guy. If that's the case, that guy's teacher might appear. Pushi couldn't help but smile mysteriously. Elder Pushi, what are you smiling about? Xing Yao felt strange. Pushi said, nothing. It's just that little brother isn't that easy. It's easy to catch him. Such a small matter is really not enough to alarm the people behind him. Small matter? Could it be that he can handle it himself? Xing Yao was surprised. It's very simple. Pushi nodded and smiled. Miss seems to be interested in him. Do you want to take a look? Yes. Xing Yao nodded vigorously. Her eyes sparkled, making her look even more charming. Pushi and Xing Yao walked down from the second floor and followed the troops to the Nine Sons martial house. On this day, almost at the same time, all the forces in Fengjian City were alarmed. The Mo family, what? There's such a thing? Emohai was pleasantly surprised. That's right, Patriarch. That Lin Tian killed 3 generals on the streets. Now, the city lord and the commander are personally leading 1,000 guards to the Nine Sons martial house to ask for their men. A disciple of the Mo family said excitedly. Emohai slammed the wooden table beside him. Good, good, good. Let's see how that little bastard can survive this time. Does the Patriarch want to take a look? The disciple of the Mo family asked. Of course. Lead the way, Emohai said. For the Mo family and Emohai, this was undoubtedly the best thing that had happened in the past few months. The Qin family, what? The commander and the city lord are going to the Nine Sons martial house to ask for Lin Tian. Qin Luo was shocked. Was Lin Tian in danger? Thinking of this, Qin Luo couldn't help but panic. Patriarch, why are you panicking? If that Lin Tian is really suppressed by the commander and the city lord, it should be a good thing for the Qin family. This way, we can take over all of the Lin family's properties. Some of the higher-ups of the Qin family frowned. The higher-ups of the Qin family all knew about the relationship between Lin Tian and the Qin family. After all, this matter could be hidden from others, but it couldn't be hidden from the higher-ups. What do you know? Don't talk nonsense, Qin Luo shouted. The upper echelons of the Qin clan knew that Lin Tian was cooperating with the Qin clan, but only Qin Luo knew that Lin Tian was not only a disciple of the Nine Yang martial house, but he was also an array manipulator that surpassed the second stage. If Lin Tian cooperated with the Qin family, it meant that the Qin family had a second stage array controller behind them. This was more valuable than taking over all of the Lin family's properties. It could be said that if something really happened to Lin Tian, it wouldn't be good for the Qin family's future development. No, I have to go take a look, Qin Luo said anxiously. Qin Luo rushed out of the main hall and went to the Nine Yang martial house. On this day, all the forces in Fengjian City were alarmed. They had different attitudes and emotions. However, most people were just watching the show. At this time, the city lord and commander Zhou, he had already led over 1,000 soldiers to the Nine Yang martial house's main gate. Over 1,000 soldiers gathered together, and most of them were experts at the 7th and 8th body refinement realm. Adding on the fact that they had all been on the battlefield before, their combined might could be said to be very terrifying, causing many of the onlookers to turn pale. They actually surrounded the Nine Yang martial house. What a big battle array! This is the Imperial Army. Who dares to provoke them? Many people whispered. In the Nine Yang martial house, many disciples looked at this scene, and their faces turned ugly. In Fengjian City, there were actually people who dared to surround the Nine Yang martial house. At the same time, a cold snort sounded. Shi Dong and Mu Qing came in, followed by a group of instructors. None of them were weak. Shi Dong stood in front of the Nine Yang martial house's main gate and stared at the city lord and Zhou He. His voice was cold. Duan Yin, Zhou He, you've eaten a leopard's heart. How dare you cause trouble in my Nine-Yang martial house? End of chapter. Chapter 100. Duan Yin was the governor of Fengjian City, and Zhou, he was the commander-in-chief of Fengjian City. They were both high and mighty figures, but in the eyes of Dong and Mu Qing, they were nothing. Dong and Mu, he stared at the two of them coldly. A powerful aura spread out, causing the soldiers outside the martial mansion to tremble. An expert at the peak of the divine vein realm was no joke. Elders, please calm down. We didn't mean to offend you. Duan Yin got off his horse and said, I received news that a disciple called Lin Tian from the Nine-Yang martial mansion killed 3 divine pulse realm generals in Fengjian City. I believe the two of you should understand the severity of this matter. Duan Yan's cultivation wasn't weak. He was at the 7th level of the divine vein realm. However, he was slightly weaker than Dong and Mu Qing. Although he was the city lord in terms of status, Dong and Mu Qing weren't any lower than him. In fact, in some sense, they were even higher. Therefore, Duan Yin didn't get angry at Dong's reprimand and appeared to be very calm. Seeing Duan Yin get off his horse, Zhou He also got off his horse and stood quietly at the side. Dong and Mu Qing looked at Zhou He coldly. City Lord Duan, have you asked your subordinates why such a thing happened today? Mu Qing asked. Duan Yin was slightly puzzled and asked, Elder Mu, what do you mean? Dong's temper wasn't as good as Mu Qing's. He snorted and said, why? Ask him yourself. Duan Yin was even more puzzled. He tilted his head and asked, Zhou He, what's going on? Governor, I don't know what Elder Shi and Elder Mu mean. Zhou He shook his head. Dong stared at Zhou He and said coldly, Zhou He, put away your tricks. Do you think we don't know what's going on today? You should be glad that we didn't come to find trouble with you. How dare you gather your troops at the gate of the martial mansion? Do you think the Nine-Yang martial mansion is a decoration? The news of Lin Tian killing Qin Ping and the other two had spread throughout Fengjian City. Dong and Mu Qing naturally knew about it. Moreover, the two of them had personally asked Su Shu about the details of the entire incident. As elders of the martial house, not only were their cultivations powerful, they were also extremely experienced. How could they not see through this scheme? Something like this happened right after Zhou Hao died. No matter how one looked at it, there was a big problem. Something fishy? I have no idea what you're talking about. Zhou He continued, Today, 3 soldiers were ordered to deliver a letter of challenge to me, but they were stopped by your martial house disciple Lin Tian. The 3 soldiers only scolded him a little before they were beaten up. Qin Ping and the other 2 happened to be passing by, and after they scolded him a little, they were killed on the street. Nonsense. A voice rang out. Su Shu stood out from behind Mu Qing and glared at Zhou He. It was clearly those 3 soldiers who deliberately urged their horses to crash into us. Later, because the horses were inexplicably frightened, they were thrown off their horses. Because of this, those 3 wanted to capture us. Lin Tian only made a move out of self-defense. Coincidentally, just as this happened, 3 generals led their troops over as if they had calculated the time beforehand. What's worse is that these 3 generals didn't even ask about it and immediately ordered to suppress us. This is obviously some people with ulterior motives deliberately trying to harm others. At this point, Su Shu changed the topic and said, "Oh right, Commander Zhou, not long ago, in a fair death match, your son, Zhou Hao, died at the hands of Lin Tian. Today's matter couldn't be a scheme of yours, right?" As soon as Su Shu finished speaking, the expressions of many people in the surroundings changed, and all of them had strange expressions. The commander's son was killed in a death match. There's actually such a thing? This, now that you mention it, it's indeed a bit strange. It's too much of a coincidence. That's true, but there's no evidence. It's just a guess. Many people were talking about it. In the distance, Xing Yao and Pu Shi stood among the ordinary people, slightly surprised. This little brother Lin Tian is really bold. Before this, he actually killed the commander's son. Pushi smiled bitterly. Xian Yao's eyes lit up. This guy is really interesting. In the other direction, cold sweat broke out on Qin Luo's forehead. She really didn't expect that Lin Tian would actually kill the commander's son. Duan Yin frowned and looked at Su Shu. "This is my disciple," Mu Qing said. With that, Mu Qing pulled Su Shu behind him. Duan Yin nodded. "So it's Elder Mu's disciple." With that, Duan Yin tilted his head and looked at Zhou He. "What the hell is going on? Is what this girl said true? City Lord, I'm a soldier. Naturally, I have the honor of a soldier." Zhou He's expression was painful, but he straightened his chest. "As a father, I do want to take revenge for my son's death. But as the girl said, Hao was killed in a fair battle of life and death. Although I hate it, I can only endure it. I swear on the honor of the imperial city that today's matter has nothing to do with me. Otherwise, I'll die a horrible death." Zhou He's words were sonorous and powerful. Coupled with his painful expression, many people fell silent. After Zhou He's words, 3 people walked out of the thousands of soldiers behind him. "These 3 people are?" Duan Yin frowned. The 3 soldiers knelt down on one knee. "Reporting to the city lord, the 3 of us are the people who delivered the letter for the commander." "Oh, tell me what happened." "Yes." The 3 of them gave their orders. One of them said, "Yesterday, the 3 of us were ordered to go to the commander's residence in Luoyu City to get a letter for Commander Zhou. We traveled through the night and finally arrived at Supervisor Feng City this morning. However, on the way to the commander's residence, we were stopped by a young man in the middle of the road. He startled our horses and caused us to fall off the backs of our horses. It's fine for us to fall off the horses, but the key point is that the letter was destroyed. City Lord, you know how important the letter is." The 3 of us were furious at that time and subconsciously shouted a few words. We didn't expect that person to really fight. That person is a genius of the martial house. The 3 of us were naturally not his match. Coincidentally, at this time, Chen Ping and the other 2 generals who often patrol the streets passed by here. They wanted to seek justice for the 3 of us, but who would have thought that that person was so arrogant and strong that he actually killed the 3 generals? At this point, the 3 of them shed tears and shouted, "City Lord, Lord Commander, please avenge the 3 generals." Hearing this, the surrounding people were moved. Many people couldn't help but frown. Su Shu was furious. She pointed at the 3 of them and said, "You're lying, twisting the truth. Every word of the 3 of us is true. If there's a single lie, may the heavens and earth destroy us." The 3 of them said harshly. At this time, Zhou He stepped forward and looked at Sherdong and Mu Qing. He said, "I know that Lin Tian is the most brilliant genius of your martial house this year. But so what? Could it be that just because he was a rare genius, he could do whatever he wanted? Can he kill people as he pleases? Impossible." As he spoke, Zhou He clenched his fists tightly. His face was filled with pain. "Chun Ping and the other 2 generals are not only my subordinates and friends, but also soldiers of the Empire who retired from the battlefield. They can't die like this. The culprit must be severely punished. Severely punish the culprit. Severely punish the culprit. Severely punish the culprit." Following Zhou Hao's words, all the soldiers behind him began to shout in unison. With over 1,000 soldiers gathered together and roaring like this, the momentum was truly somewhat terrifying. Looking at this scene, many of the onlookers were moved. In the distance, Pushi and Xian Yao stood together. Xian Yao couldn't help but frown. This show he has some prestige, and his mind is clear. He knows that the strength of a few people isn't enough to negotiate with the Nanyang martial house. Therefore, he gathered all the soldiers here. At this moment, thousands of soldiers are shouting together, demanding the Nanyang martial house to hand over the culprit. Even the elders of the martial house will be in a difficult position. Pushi said, "What a cunning old fox." Xian Yao snorted. The soldiers roared with great momentum. Each wave was louder than the last. It was shocking. Sherdong and Mu Qing stared at Zhou Hao with sullen faces. They said coldly, "You gathered people to threaten us?" "I don't dare." Zhou said, "Everyone in Fengjin City knows about the martial house's status. Even if I had more guts, I wouldn't dare to threaten the two elders. However, the Empire's generals can't be killed for nothing. If I don't punish the culprit because of the martial house's status, wouldn't I disappoint the thousands of soldiers?" At this point, he cupped his fists and bowed 45 degrees. "Therefore, if I may be so bold, I ask the two elders to hand over the culprit. Elder, please hand over the culprit. Elder, please hand over the culprit. Elder, please hand over the culprit." The soldiers bowed like and shouted in unison again, especially the three people who claimed to be the messengers. They shouted the loudest. Dong and Mu Qing's faces were ugly. They could reprimand Zhou, and they couldn't be polite to City Lord Duan Yin. However, they were helpless against thousands of soldiers. Duan Yin frowned. "Stop." Duan Yin was the city lord of Fengjin City. With this shout, the thousands of soldiers stopped. After that, Duan Yin looked at Mu Qing and Dong. "Elders, these soldiers are the subordinates of the three generals. I hope the two elders can understand their feelings. Let's not talk about punishing the culprit for now. Can you let that Lin Tian come out and say a few words? There shouldn't be any problems, right?" To be able to sit in the position of the city lord, Duan Yin was naturally not a simple-minded person. When he heard the word fishy from Dong's mouth and heard Su Shu's words, his heart was slightly suspicious. Zhou's report was not false. Chunping and the other two were indeed killed by Lin Tian. However, Duan Yin was very clear about Dong and Mu Qing's character. Since Dong said the word fishy, coupled with Su Shu's words, there might be more to it than meets the eye. After thinking about it, Duan Yin decided to make a choice. He would let Lin Tian come out and make a decision after that. Dong frowned. He wanted to say something, but Mu Qing pulled him back. "Su Shu, call Lin Tian over." Mu Qing said. Since Duan Yin had already taken a step back, if they continued to refuse, wouldn't it seem like they had a guilty conscience? Su Shu coldly snorted and glared at Zhou. Then, she ran towards Lin Tian's residence. Zhou's eyes flashed with a sinister light. Lin Tiansha had indeed killed Chunping and the other two. Even if Dong and the others guessed that there was something fishy about today's matter, so what? As long as he stubbornly refused to admit it, what could these people do? The commander of Luoyu City was his good friend for many years. The three soldiers kneeling in front of him would definitely not offend him for a martial house disciple. They would definitely stand on his side. Even if Dong and the others wanted to investigate, there was nothing they could do. As such, as long as he called Lin Tian out with the help of thousands of soldiers, the martial house would not have to worry about not handing over the culprit. Within the martial house, Lin Tian walked out of his residence and headed towards the martial pavilion. His divine pulse realm cultivation had completely stabilized. He had also finished cultivating the remaining 30% of the Azure Thunder Sword Art. He was prepared to go to the martial pavilion to choose an inferior divine pulse realm martial technique. Speaking of which, the highest level martial technique in the Nine-Yang martial house is the inferior divine pulse martial technique. Lin Tian muttered to himself. Thinking about it, Lin Tian's eyes flashed. After a while, the Nine-Yang martial house would not be able to satisfy him. If he wanted to walk further on the martial path, he would have to go to a higher place. Imperial City, Northern Flame Imperial Courtyard. Lin Tian murmured. Taking a deep breath, Lin Tian shook his head. The most important thing now was to increase his strength. After all, according to Luo Xiao, entering the Northern Flame Imperial Courtyard was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Lin Tian, a voice sounded from the front. Su Shu ran towards him. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.